Hey friends, welcome to the Horror Sleep. Almost 90% of you watching aren't subscribed. If you enjoy these true park ranger horror stories, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps the channel. Oh, and where are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments. That morning, the fog was unusually thick. The thickest I had seen in my 7 years working as a park ranger in Olympic National Park. You know what I mean, the kind of fog that not only obscures your vision but also swallows sounds, making you question whether you're still connected to the world. My name is Ian Reddington, and I've been patrolling the Hoh rainforest area longer than most park rangers stay on a single assignment. People ask me why I haven't transferred to a sunnier, less oppressive place. The truth is, I love it here. The giant Sitka spruce trees covered in moss, the nutrient-rich logs teeming with new life, the constant whisper of water dripping from thousands of surfaces. It has a beauty that commands respect. That morning started like any other. I pulled on my uniform in the dim light of 5 a.m., made my coffee strong and black, and checked the weather report. Heavy fog advisory. Visibility less than 50 feet in some areas. Standard protocol for the Hoh in late October. Eva Corbin, my patrol partner for the day, was already at the ranger station when I arrived. She's good people, sharp, competent, doesn't spook easy. Been with the Park Service for 3 years, transferred from Crater Lake. She's got this way of moving through the forest like she's part of it, quiet and sure-footed. "Morning, Ian," she said, not looking up from the logbook. "We've got a situation." I poured myself a second cup of coffee from the station pot. "What kind of situation?" "Hiker didn't check back in yesterday. Derek Paulson, age 32, solo hiker, experienced. Was supposed to return by 6 p.m. His car's still at the Solduc Falls trailhead." My stomach tightened. Solo hikers in the fog were always a concern, but experienced ones who knew to check in were usually reliable. When they weren't, it meant something had gone wrong. "How experienced are we talking?" "Military background. Search and rescue volunteer. He knows these woods." Eva finally looked up at me, and I could see the concern in her dark eyes. Weather was clear when he went in. And then the fog rolled in, like a wall, around 4 p.m. yesterday. I checked my radio, my GPS, my emergency beacon, everything functioning. "Let's gear up. We'll start at Solduc, work our way through his planned route." The drive to the trailhead took 40 minutes, and the fog got worse with every mile. By the time we parked next to Derek Paulson's red Subaru, visibility had dropped to maybe 30 feet. The forest was silent except for the constant drip of moisture from the canopy above. Eva checked the car while I studied the trail map. Paulson had filed his route with us, a 12-mile loop that should have taken him about 6 hours, accounting for stops and photos. He was supposed to hit the Solduc Falls, swing through the old growth section, and come back via the river trail. "Car's locked," Eva reported. "Water bottle in the cup holder. Energy bar wrappers in the center console. Looks like he packed light for a day hike. Let's move." We entered the forest, and immediately the world contracted. The fog here wasn't like normal fog. It had weight to it, substance. It pressed against you, made every sound seem simultaneously too loud and too muffled. Our flashlights created weak cones of light that barely penetrated 15 feet. The trail was soft underfoot, cushioned by decades of fallen needles and moss. Everything dripped. Water fell from the massive Sitka spruces like slow rain, spattering on the broad leaves of sword ferns that crowded the understory. The smell was rich and heavy, decomposition and growth happening simultaneously, the forest's endless cycle of death feeding life. We'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes when I heard it. Ian, my name, spoken in a whisper, coming from somewhere to my left, off the trail. I stopped so abruptly that Eva nearly walked into me. "What?" she asked. "You didn't hear that?" "Hear what?" I listened, straining against the sound of dripping water and our own breathing. Nothing. Thought I heard, "Never mind, let's keep moving." We continued deeper into the forest. The trees here were ancient, their trunks so massive it would take 4 or 5 people holding hands to encircle them. They disappeared up into the fog, their canopies invisible above us. Moss hung from every branch like tattered curtains, swaying gently in air currents too subtle for us to feel at ground level. Ian. There it was again. Clearer this time. My name, definitely my name, spoken in a voice I couldn't quite place. It sounded like it was coming from deeper in the forest, away from the marked trail. This time, Eva noticed my reaction. "Ian, what's wrong?" "You really don't hear that? Someone calling my name?" She went still, head cocked, listening. 5 seconds passed. 10. Finally, she shook her head. "I don't hear anything but the forest." "You sure you're not just—" "Ian, help!" The word, help, sent ice down my spine. It was faint, desperate, and it was definitely coming from off-trail, maybe 50 yards into the dense growth to our left. "That," I said. "Tell me you heard that." Ava's face was concerned now. "Ian, I didn't hear anything. Are you feeling okay? Sometimes the fog can play tricks. I'm not imagining it." I pulled out my radio. "This is Reddington, Ranger Station. Do you copy?" Static. "Ranger Station, this is Reddington on the Sol Duke Trail, checking in." More static, then a broken response. "Copy. Red. Ton. Proceed. Caution." The signal was fragmenting. Not unusual in the deep forest, especially in heavy fog, but still unsettling. I looked at Eva. "Someone's out there. They're calling for help." "Ian, if there's someone out there calling for help, I should be able to hear it too. The fog might muffle sound, but not that much. Not when we're standing right next to each other." She had a point, but I knew what I'd heard, or thought I'd heard. "Ian, please, help me." This time, the voice was more desperate, more afraid. And it was moving. It had been to my left, but now it seemed to be coming from slightly ahead of us, still off the trail. "There," I said, pointing. "Did you hear that?" Eva followed my gesture but shook her head. "I'm not hearing anything unusual. Maybe we should call for backup, get you checked out." "I'm fine," I said, more sharply than I intended. "Sorry, I'm fine. Let's continue on the trail. Keep looking for signs of Paulson." We walked in silence for a while. I tried to focus on the search, looking for footprints, broken branches, any sign of our missing hiker. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from just beyond the edge of visibility. And every few minutes, I'd hear it again. Ian. Always my name. Always from a direction that seemed to shift, to move as we moved. And always when Eva wasn't paying direct attention to me. When she was examining a tree or checking her GPS or looking at the trail ahead. As soon as she turned to me, the voice would stop. After an hour, we reached Sol Duke Falls. The waterfall was barely visible through the fog, a ghost of rushing water producing a constant roar that somehow made the silence when you stepped away from it even more profound. "No sign of him," Eva said, checking the viewing platforms. "No fresh prints, no scuff marks, nothing to indicate he stopped here yesterday." I was only half listening. The voice had been quiet for the last 20 minutes, and its absence was somehow worse than hearing it. I found myself straining to hear it, waiting for it. "Ian, are you with me?" I turned to Eva. "Yeah? Yeah, sorry, you're right. No sign he came through here." Maybe he altered his route, took a different path. Maybe. Ian, there it was again. So close, it sounded like someone was standing right next to me. I spun around, my hand dropping instinctively to the can of bear spray on my belt. Nothing, just fog and trees and dripping water. Eva was watching me with undisguised concern now. Ian, talk to me. What's going on? I keep hearing my name. Someone calling my name. It moves around, always just out of sight. You really don't hear it? No. Her voice was gentle but firm. I don't hear anything calling your name. Ian, have you been sleeping okay? Eating regularly? Sometimes exhaustion and low blood sugar can cause auditory. I'm not hallucinating, I said. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Was I? Why would only I hear it? Why not Eva? Let's take a break, Eva suggested. Eat something, hydrate, rest for a few minutes. We found a relatively dry spot under a massive spruce and broke out our emergency rations. The granola bars tasted like sawdust in my dry mouth, but I forced myself to eat. Eva was probably right. Maybe I was just tired, stressed about the missing hiker, letting the oppressive atmosphere of the fog get to me. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I knew what I'd heard was real. The question was, what was calling my name, and why couldn't Eva hear it? We rested for 15 minutes, though it felt longer in the timeless gray world of the fog. Eva kept glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking, and I couldn't blame her. From her perspective, her partner was hearing voices that didn't exist. It was textbook warning signs for someone who needed to be pulled from duty. Ready to move on? She asked, finally. I nodded, shouldering my pack. The brief rest had done nothing to ease the tension in my shoulders. If anything, the silence during our break had been worse than the walking. At least while we were moving, I could convince myself the voice was just some acoustic trick of the forest, sound bouncing off the fog in strange ways. We left Solduke Falls behind and headed south on the river trail. This section of the forest was even more primordial, if that was possible. Trees that had been ancient when Columbus landed in America towered around us. The understory was choked with ferns and salal, and every surface was covered in a thick carpet of moss that glowed an almost supernatural green even in the dim light. Ian, I didn't react this time. I'd decided to try an experiment. If I ignored it, maybe it would stop. Maybe Eva was right and it was all in my head. Some stress-induced auditory hallucination that would fade if I didn't give it attention. We walked in silence for another 20 minutes. The trail here followed the river, though we could barely see the water through the fog. We could hear it, though, a constant, rushing susurration that merged with the drip of moisture from the trees until it was impossible to tell where one sound ended and another began. Ian, please. I gritted my teeth and kept walking. Don't respond, don't react, just keep moving. Ian, help me. The voice was getting more insistent, more desperate. It tugged at something primal in me, the instinct to respond to a cry for help. But I forced myself to maintain my pace, eyes forward, following Eva's steady progress ahead of me. Then Eva stopped. Ian, look at this. I moved up beside her. She was crouching next to the trail, examining something in the soft earth. Footprints, she said. Fresh. Within the last day or so, men's hiking boots, size 10 or 11. Could be our missing hiker. Finally, something concrete to focus on. I knelt beside her, studying the print. It was clear, despite the damp earth, pressed deep, like whoever made it was carrying a full pack. The treads matched the description Paulson's emergency contact had given us. Salomon hiking boots, relatively new. He came through here, I said. Let's see where the trail goes. We followed the prints along the river trail. They were easy to track in the soft earth, a clear line of evidence that we were on the right path. My focus narrowed to the immediate task. Watch for prints, scan for signs of disturbance, maintain awareness of our surroundings. Ian, why won't you answer me? The voice sounded hurt now, almost pleading. I felt a pang of guilt, which was ridiculous. You can't feel guilty about ignoring a hallucination. The footprints led us deeper into the old growth section, then suddenly veered off the main trail. Eva and I exchanged glances. Why would he go off trail here? She asked. There's nothing but dense forest in that direction. No views, no landmarks. I studied the prints more carefully. They looked purposeful, not like someone stumbling or lost, more like someone following something. Ian, look at this. Eva was pointing at another set of prints, these ones coming from the opposite direction and meeting Paulson's at the point where he'd left the trail. But these prints were strange. They were the same size, the same depth, the same tread pattern, identical to Paulson's prints. How is that possible? I asked. Is there someone else wearing the same boots? Or did he double back on his own trail? Eva finished. But that doesn't make sense either. The angles are wrong. These two sets of prints approached this spot from different directions at different times. She was right. I could see it now that she'd pointed it out. One set of prints came along the river trail from the north, the direction we'd just come from. The other set came from deeper in the forest from the west. Both sets belonged to the same boots, or boots so similar as to be indistinguishable. This is weird, Eva said, which was an understatement. Ian, come find me. I'm lost. The voice was stronger now, more insistent. And for the first time I thought I detected a direction. It was coming from where the second set of prints had originated, deeper in the forest, off any marked trail. We should follow them, I said. Both sets lead that way. Eva looked uncertain. Protocol says we should mark this location, call it in, wait for backup before going off trail in these conditions. She was right, of course, but something was pulling me toward those prints, toward whatever lay in the fog-shrouded forest ahead. The voice in my head, hallucination or not, was coming from the same direction. You're right, I said. Call it in. I'm going to do a quick reconnaissance, just 50 yards or so. I'll stay within visual contact. Ian, I don't think just 50 yards. You'll be able to see my light the whole time. Before she could argue further, I switched on my flashlight and followed the double trail of footprints into the forest. Behind me, I heard Eva key her radio, trying to raise the ranger station. The static was worse off trail, the trees and fog conspiring to break up any signal. The prints led me through dense undergrowth, around massive nurse logs, past trees that had stood here for half a millennium. The fog seemed to thicken with every step, my flashlight beam penetrating less and less distance. But I could still see Eva's light behind me, a reassuring beacon in the gray. Ian, very close now. So close, it sounded like the speaker was just beyond the next tree. I pushed forward, ducking under a low-hanging branch dripping with moss. The footprints were still clear, still leading deeper. Both sets, parallel now, like two people walking side by side. Then they ended, not gradually, not fading into harder ground. They just stopped. In the middle of a clear patch of soft, damp earth, both sets of prints simply ceased to exist, like whoever made them had been plucked straight up into the air. I stood there, my light playing across the impossible scene. In front of me was unmarked forest floor. Behind me, clear as day, two sets of identical footprints. "Eva!" I called out. "Eva, you need to see this." No response. I turned around, expecting to see her light behind me. Nothing, just fog and darkness. "Eva!" I shouted, louder this time. My voice was swallowed by the fog. seeming to travel no distance at all before being absorbed by the damp air. I started back the way I'd come, following my own footprints. But something was wrong. The forest didn't look the same. The trees seemed different, arranged in ways I didn't remember. That massive nurse log I'd passed, had it been on my left or my right? I couldn't recall. "Eva, can you hear me?" Still nothing. No response, no light, no sound except the eternal drip of water from the canopy above. I checked my compass. The needle spun lazily, refusing to settle on any particular direction. My GPS showed my location as a blinking error message. The radio was nothing but static. And then, from somewhere in the fog ahead, I heard it. Ian. But it wasn't the same voice I'd been hearing all morning. This one was different. This one sounded exactly like Eva. "Ian, where are you? I can't see your light anymore." Eva's voice coming from ahead of me, from the direction I'd been walking. But that couldn't be right. Eva was behind me, back on the trail, wasn't she? "Eva," I called out. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to you." "Hurry," came the response. "I think I found something. I think I found Paulson." I moved toward the voice, my heart pounding. My flashlight beam cut through the fog, revealing nothing but more trees, more moss, more of the endless green cathedral of the Hoh rainforest. "Eva, keep talking so I can find you." "I'm here, Ian, just a little further." "You're almost here." The voice was close now, maybe 20 feet away. I pushed through a thick patch of sword fern, sierns, their fronds leaving wet streaks across my jacket. Just beyond them was a small clearing, and in the center of it, nothing. The clearing was empty. "Eva?" My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "I'm right here, Ian. Turn around." I spun, my light sweeping in a wide arc. No one. Nothing. Just fog and trees and the terrible, heavy silence. That's when I noticed the footprints again. They were there, in the soft earth of the clearing. But now there weren't 2 sets. There were 3. And one of them, the newest one, was mine, leading me in a perfect circle. I'd been walking in circles. And somewhere behind me, from the direction I'd originally come, I heard Eva's voice. Her real voice, different from the one I'd been following, calling out in genuine concern. "Ian! Ian, where are you? Answer me!" But I also heard another voice. The first voice. The one that had been calling my name all morning. And now, finally, I recognized it. It was my own voice, calling to me from the fog. My own voice begging myself for help. The moment of recognition hit me like a physical blow. My own voice calling to me, leading me in circles through the fog. It should have been impossible. It was impossible. And yet I could hear it, clear as day, echoing from somewhere just beyond the reach of my flashlight. "Ian," my voice, my cadence, my tone. "I'm lost. Help me." "No," I said out loud, as if speaking could break whatever spell had taken hold. "No, that's not real." But even as I denied it, I could hear the fear in my voice, both voices, the one I was speaking with and the one calling from the fog. They matched perfectly, a harmony of terror. Eva's real voice came again, more distant now, tinged with panic. "Ian, if you can hear me, follow my voice. Stay where you are, and I'll come to you." I tried to respond, but something stopped me. If I called back to her, would the thing in the fog take my voice and use it to lead her astray too? The thought paralyzed me. I stood in the clearing, surrounded by my own circular footprints, trying to think through the growing dread. Get it together, Reddington. Think. You're a ranger. You're trained for this. I forced myself to take a breath, to assess the situation logically. My compass was useless, GPS was down, radio was static. But I still had landmarks. I'd been trained to navigate without instruments. The river. I could use the sound of the river. It had been on our left when we were on the trail, which meant if I kept it on my right, I should be able to work my way back. I listened, filtering out the drip of water from the trees, Eva's distant calls, and the impossible sound of my own voice calling from the fog. There, beneath it all, I could hear the deeper rush of the river. It was faint, but it was there. I started walking toward it, away from my circular footprints, away from the voice. Every instinct screamed at me to call out to Eva, to let her know I was okay, but I couldn't. Not until I understood what was happening. "Ian, where are you going?" my voice asked from behind me. "The trail is this way. I found it. I can lead you back." I didn't respond. I focused on the sound of the river, kept moving. The forest seemed to close in around me. Branches that I could have sworn weren't there a moment ago now blocking my path. I had to duck and weave, push through walls of fern and salal, all while keeping that distant sound of water in my mind. My legs ached, my shoulders burned from the pack. How long had I been walking? It felt like hours since I'd left the trail, but when I checked my watch, only 15 minutes had passed. Time was playing tricks too, stretching and compressing in the fog. Then I stepped out onto the trail. Not the same section where we'd found the footprints. This was further south, closer to where the river trail intersected with the old ranger path. I knew this spot. I'd walked past it 100 times, and standing on the trail looking directly at me was Ava. "There you are!" She rushed toward me, her face a mixture of relief and anger. "Don't ever do that again. You said 50 yards, you'd stay in visual contact. I couldn't see your light, couldn't hear you. I thought—" She stopped mid-sentence, studying my face in the beam of her flashlight. "Ian, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." How could I explain? I got turned around. The fog is thicker than I thought. I couldn't find my way back to you, so I navigated by the river sound. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all I could manage. Eva's expression softened. "The important thing is you're okay. But Ian, we need to talk about what's been happening. The voices you've been hearing, getting disoriented like that, these are serious symptoms. Maybe we should head back, get you checked out." "No," I said, more forcefully than I intended. "No, we need to find Paulson. He's out here somewhere, and if the same thing is happening to him—" I trailed off, but Eva understood. If I was experiencing some kind of auditory phenomenon and Paulson was too, he might have followed the voices off trail, might still be following them, walking in circles, getting more and more lost. "Okay," Eva said finally. "But we stay together from here on out. No more splitting up, no matter what we hear or think we see. Agreed?" "Agreed." We continued along the trail, Eva in front, me close behind. Close enough that I could have reached out and touched her shoulder. I wasn't taking any chances of getting separated again. The forest felt different now. More hostile, somehow. The fog seemed to move with purpose, parting in front of us and closing behind like a living thing herding us forward. The moss-draped trees loomed like ancient sentinels, and every dark space between them seemed to hide something watching us. We'd been walking for maybe half an hour when Eva stopped. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. My heart lurched. "Hear what?" "Someone calling, a man's voice. It sounds like he's calling for help." The relief I felt was immense. She could hear it too. I wasn't crazy, or at least we were both crazy. "Where's it coming from?" I asked. Eva turned slowly, trying to pinpoint the direction. "There, I think, west, off the trail." That was the same direction the footprints had led, the same direction I'd gone before. Every nerve in my body screamed danger. But if we could both hear it, if it was real. "Help! Someone help me! I'm lost!" The voice was clearer now, more desperate. It sounded like a man in his 30s. It could be Paulson. "We have to check it out," Eva said, already moving toward the sound. "Wait," I grabbed her arm. "Eva, before we were separated, I told you about the voice I was hearing. What exactly did I say it sounded like?" She frowned at the odd question. "You said someone was calling your name, that it sounded like they needed help. Why? And you couldn't hear it at all?" "No, I told you that. Ian, what's this about?" I wanted to tell her. Wanted to explain that the voice I'd heard had been my own, that it had led me in circles, that it had even imitated her voice to lure me deeper. But looking at the confusion and concern on her face, I couldn't find the words. "Just, let's be careful," I said finally. "Really careful. Help! Please, I can't find the trail." The voice came again, and we moved toward it together, our flashlights cutting weak paths through the fog. The forest off-trail was dense here, the undergrowth thick enough that we had to push our way through. Branches caught at our clothes, roots tried to trip us. But we kept going, following the cries for help. "Keep calling," Eva shouted. "We're coming to you. Stay where you are." "Thank God," came the response. "I've been lost for hours. This fog, I can't see anything." We pushed through one final wall of salal, and there, in a small natural clearing, we found him. A man, mid-30s, wearing hiking gear. He had Paulson's build, Paulson's pack. His face was streaked with dirt and moisture, his eyes wide with relief when our lights found him. "Derek Paulson?" Eva called out. Yes, thank God you found me. I've been walking in circles. I couldn't find the trail. My GPS stopped working. He stopped talking abruptly. His eyes, which had been fixed on Eva, slid past her to look at me, and his expression changed. The relief drained away, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Confusion? Fear? "That's not right," he said quietly. "What's not right?" Eva asked, moving closer to him. "You're safe now. We're going to get you out of here." But Paulson wasn't looking at Eva. He was staring at me, his face going pale. "There are two of you," he whispered. "How are there two of you?" "Two of who?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Two rangers. Two people wearing that exact uniform with that exact face. One of you just left here, said you were going to get help, and now you're back, but you're still there too, behind that tree." He pointed past us into the fog. Eva and I spun around, our lights sweeping across the trees. For just a moment, I thought I saw it. A figure in a ranger's uniform, standing in the fog maybe 20 yards away. It had my build, my stance, and as our lights hit it, it raised one hand in a slow, deliberate wave. Then it stepped backward, into the fog, and was gone. What the hell was that? Eva's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. I couldn't answer, because I'd finally understood what was happening in the Hoh rainforest. The voice that called with my voice, the footprints that appeared and disappeared, the figure that looked like me. The fog wasn't just concealing something, it was reflecting something, taking shapes and sounds and throwing them back, twisted and wrong, like a funhouse mirror made of mist, and we'd just walked deeper into it. The silence after the figure disappeared was absolute. Even the constant drip of water from the canopy seemed to have stopped, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Eva, Paulson, and I stood frozen in our triangle of flashlight beams, none of us willing to be the first to move or speak. Finally, Eva broke the silence. "Ian, tell me you saw that too." "I saw it," My voice sounded hollow in my own ears. "Paulson, how long ago did you see the first one?" Paulson was still staring at the spot where the figure had been. Maybe 20 minutes? I'd been walking for hours trying to find the trail. Then I heard someone calling. Sounded like a woman, panicked, like she was hurt. I followed the voice and ended up here, in this clearing. That's when the ranger appeared. "Did it say anything?" I asked. "Yeah," said it was going to get backup, told me to wait here. It sounded just like you, same voice, same way of talking. How is that possible? I didn't have an answer, at least not one that made sense. Eva was checking her radio again, trying to raise the station, but all she got was static. Our GPS units were still non-functional. Even our cell phones, which we carried for emergencies, showed no signal, despite being in an area where we usually had at least one bar. "We need to get back to the trail," Eva said. All three of us, together, no separation. We mark our path, move slowly, and don't follow any voices or figures we see. Agreed? Paulson and I both nodded. It was a solid plan. Textbook search and rescue protocol for disoriented hikers. But as we started walking, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest had other ideas. We moved in a tight group, Eva in front, Paulson in the middle, me bringing up the rear. I tied bright orange flagging tape to trees as we went, marking our path so we could track if we started going in circles. The fog seemed to resist us, pressing in from all sides, making it hard to see more than a few feet in any direction. That's when the voices started. Not just my voice this time. All of our voices, calling out from different directions in the fog. "Ava, over here! This way to the trail! Help, I fell. I think my ankle's broken." Each call perfectly matched to one of our voices, each one designed to split us up, to lure us away from each other. "Don't respond," I said quietly. "Don't react. Keep moving forward." But it was harder than it should have been. The voices were so convincing, so perfectly calibrated to inspire urgency and concern. When I heard what sounded like Eva crying out in pain, every instinct screamed at me to help her, even though the real Eva was right in front of me, walking steadily forward. "This is insane," Paulson muttered. "What is this place? What's happening?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think it has something to do with the fog. It's doing something to sound, to perception, creating echoes or reflections of us." "That's not possible," Eva said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Neither is what we're seeing and hearing, but here we are." We walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. The forest around us remained stubbornly unfamiliar. I should have recognized something, a landmark, a distinctive tree, some feature of the landscape. I'd patrolled these woods for 7 years, but everything looked the same. An endless repetition of massive trunks, moss-covered logs, and sword ferns disappearing into fog. Then, Paulson stopped. "I've been here before," he said quietly. "That tree, the one with the split trunk and the moss growing in the shape of a face. I passed it when I first got lost. We're going in circles." He was right. I recognized the tree, too, though not from earlier today. I'd marked it on my mental map years ago during my first season in the park, had used it as a landmark dozens of times. We were less than half a mile from the river trail, but somehow we'd looped around. "The flagging tape," Eva said suddenly. "Where's the flagging tape we've been leaving?" I looked back the way we'd come. No orange markers. None. As if we'd never tied them at all, or as if something had removed them behind us. "Okay," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "New approach. We're not lost. We know roughly where we are. The river is—" I listened, but couldn't hear it anymore. The constant rush that had been our auditory anchor was gone. "We need to climb. Get above the fog layer, figure out our position. Climb what? Paulson asked. These trees are impossible to climb, and there are no hills in this section. He was right again. The whole rainforest floor was relatively flat here, and the trees, while massive, had no lower branches for dozens of feet. Then we wait, Eva decided. We find a defensible spot, wait for the fog to lift, and call for help once our radios start working again. It was a good plan. Conservative, safe. But something about it felt wrong. Wait here, in this place that was actively trying to disorient us, that was creating copies of us and using our own voices against us. Every survival instinct I had screamed against it. No, I said. We keep moving. The fog is doing something to us, something psychological. If we stay still, it'll just get worse. Ian, we've been walking for over an hour, and we're going in circles. At some point, we have to... Eva, look at your watch. She glanced down at her wrist, and her face went pale. That's not right. That can't be right. I checked mine. Both our watches showed the same time, 8:47 a.m. But that was impossible. We'd entered the forest at 6:30 a.m., had been walking and searching for hours. It should be well past noon by now. The fog, Paulson whispered. It's affecting time too, or our perception of it. That's not scientifically possible, Eva said, but there was no force behind her words. Neither is any of this, I replied. A sound cut through the fog then, clear and sharp. The crack of a breaking branch, heavy, like something large moving through the undergrowth. We all froze, lights pointing toward the sound. Hello? Eva called out. If someone's there, identify yourself. No response, but the sounds continued. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving through the forest parallel to our position. Not approaching, not retreating, just pacing. 3 sets of footsteps, Paulson said quietly. I can hear 3 distinct patterns. He was right. Once he pointed it out, I could hear it too. 3 sets of footfalls, moving in perfect synchronization with our own breathing. When we held our breath, the steps stopped. When we breathed again, they resumed. This isn't real, Eva said, but her hand had dropped to her bear spray. This can't be real. Real or not, we need to move, I said. Now. We started walking again, faster this time, pushing through the undergrowth with less caution. Behind us, the footsteps followed, maintaining their constant distance. Never getting closer, never falling behind. Then we walked into the clearing. It was maybe 50 feet across, ringed by ancient Sitka spruces. The fog was thinner here, visibility extending almost to the tree line. And in the center of the clearing, arranged in a perfect circle, were our backpacks. All 3 of them still on our backs. We were wearing our packs, could feel their weight on our shoulders. But there they were, sitting in the clearing. Zippers open, contents spilled out. My emergency beacon, my first aid kit, my backup radio. Eva's GPS unit, her water bottles, her trail maps. Paulson's food supplies, his camping gear, his identification. How? Eva started, but couldn't finish the question. I slipped my pack off my shoulders. It felt solid, real. I could feel the weight shift as I set it down. But when I looked at it, really looked at it, something was wrong. The color was slightly off, the wear pattern slightly different. It was my pack, but it wasn't. A perfect copy, but not quite perfect. We need to get out of here, Paulson said, his voice rising with panic. Right now. This place isn't right. Something is very, very wrong with this place. Everyone calm down, I said, though my own heart was hammering. There's an explanation for this. There has to be. We're trained for this. We deal with disoriented hikers all the time. "We're not dealing with disoriented hikers," Eva said quietly. "We are the disoriented hikers." She was right. We'd become exactly what we'd come here to rescue. Lost in the fog, our equipment failing, our sense of time and space distorted beyond recognition. And then, from the fog at the edge of the clearing, they stepped out. 3 figures, 3 rangers, wearing our uniforms, carrying our equipment, bearing our faces. They stood at the tree line, perfectly spaced, watching us with expressions I couldn't read. The figure that looked like me raised its hand, mirroring the gesture I'd seen earlier. Its mouth moved, and my voice came out, clear and cold. "You should have stayed on the trail." The 3 figures stepped forward into the clearing, moving in perfect unison. And as they moved, the fog rolled back in, thicker than ever, swallowing everything. The last thing I saw before the white wall closed in completely was my own face, staring back at me with eyes that held no humanity at all, only the ancient, patient hunger of the forest itself. And then there was only fog, and the sound of 6 sets of footsteps, and the terrible realization that we might never find our way out of the Hoh rainforest at all. There are things you learn to ignore as a park ranger. The way shadows move differently in old-growth forests. The sounds that almost sound like voices but aren't quite. The feeling of being watched that never quite goes away, even when you know you're alone. But some things you can't ignore. My name is Maya Thornwell, and I've been a ranger at Olympic National Park for 4 years now. Long enough to know the trails like the back of my hand. Short enough that the forest still surprises me sometimes. The Sol Duke sector is my usual patrol, 13 miles of winding trail through some of the most beautiful temperate rainforest in the world. I know every switchback, every landmark, every place where hikers tend to get confused and wander off trail, or at least I thought I did. It was early September when I found the notebook. The morning had started clear, unusual for the season, with actual sunlight filtering through the canopy for the first time in weeks. Leo Jansen, my patrol partner for the day, had commented on it when we met at the trailhead. "Makes a nice change from the soup," he'd said, gesturing at the clear sky. Leo's been with the Park Service for nearly a decade, transferred up from Mount Rainier 3 years ago. He's solid, unflappable, the kind of partner you want when things go sideways, which, in this job, they eventually always do. We'd started our patrol at 7 a.m., moving at a steady pace, checking campsites, making sure trail markers were visible, keeping an eye out for damaged sections that needed repair crews. Standard stuff. The forest was quiet that morning, peaceful in a way it rarely is. No wind in the canopy, no rain, just the occasional call of a Steller's jay and the soft sound of our boots on the packed earth trail. We were maybe 5 miles in, just past the junction where the Sol Duke Trail splits off toward Lover's Lane, when I saw it. A notebook, sitting in the middle of the trail. Not off to the side, not partially hidden in undergrowth. Right in the center of the path, placed with an almost deliberate precision that immediately struck me as wrong. "Hold up," I said, putting out a hand to stop Leo. "You see that?" He followed my gaze. Notebook. Probably fell out of someone's pack. Maybe. But something about it bothered me. The trail had been empty when we'd passed through yesterday afternoon. This hadn't been here then, which meant someone had dropped it sometime in the last 16 hours, probably this morning before we arrived. I approached it carefully, aware of Leo watching me with an amused expression. "It's not a bomb, Azabaya," he said. "I know that." I crouched down next to it. But look at the placement. It's perfectly centered on the trail, like someone put it there deliberately. The notebook was spiral bound, about 6 by 9 inches, with a dark green cover that was slightly faded. The kind you could buy in any drugstore, nothing special about it. I reached out to pick it up, and that's when I noticed the first strange thing. It was dry, completely, utterly dry. That might not sound odd, but you have to understand, we'd had 3 days of heavy rain earlier in the week. The trail was still damp in places, the undergrowth soaked, everything coated in a film of moisture that's just part of life in a temperate rainforest. Even on a clear morning like this, dew covered everything. My jacket was already damp from brushing against ferns and low-hanging branches, but this notebook was bone dry, no dew, no water stains, no dampness at all, like it had been sealed in plastic and just now unwrapped. "Huh," I said, picking it up. "That's weird." "What's weird?" "It's completely dry. How is it completely dry?" Leo shrugged. "Maybe someone just dropped it, like within the last few minutes." I looked down the trail ahead of us, then back the way we'd come. Empty in both directions. We hadn't seen anyone on the trail this morning, and we would have heard someone approaching. The forest was too quiet for anyone to move through it without making noise. I opened the notebook to check for identification, maybe a name or contact information we could use to return it to its owner. That's when I noticed the second strange thing. The pages were wet. Not damp, not slightly moist. Soaking wet, like the notebook had been submerged in water. But only the inside pages. The cover was completely dry, front and back. I could feel moisture seeping into my fingers as I held it, water dripping from the bottom edge onto my boots. "Leo, look at this." He came closer, frowning. I held the notebook open so he could see. Water was literally dripping from the pages, forming a small puddle at our feet. "How is that possible?" he asked, echoing my own thoughts. "The cover's dry, but the inside is soaked? I don't know." I carefully turned a few pages, trying not to tear the wet paper. Most were blank, the moisture making them translucent, but about a third of the way through the notebook, I found writing. Or rather, I found the same writing, repeated over and over. Every page, from that point to the end of the notebook, contained the same sentence, written in neat, cramped handwriting. When I got back, the time was different. That was it, no context, no explanation. Just that one sentence, repeated hundreds of times across dozens of pages. The handwriting never varied, never got messier or more rushed. Each iteration was exactly the same as the last, mechanical in its precision. When I got back, the time was different. I read aloud. "What does that mean?" Leo leaned over my shoulder, studying the pages. Maybe someone's idea of a joke? Or some kind of art project? "In the middle of the Solduke Trail? At 7 in the morning?" I flipped through more pages. The sentence continued, page after page after page. This is a lot of effort for a prank." "People are weird," Leo said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Any identification? Name in the front?" I checked the first few pages, careful not to tear the wet paper. Nothing. No name, no contact information, no ownership markings of any kind. Just blank pages until the writing started, and then nothing but that single, repeated sentence. "We should bag it," Leo said. "Take it back to the station, log it as lost property. Maybe someone will claim it." He was right, of course, that was protocol, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this. The dry cover and wet pages, the deliberate placement, the obsessive repetition of that one cryptic sentence. When I got back, the time was different. I pulled an evidence bag from my pack. We carry them for picking up trash, securing abandoned gear, that sort of thing, and sealed the notebook inside. The water from the pages immediately fogged up the clear plastic, condensation forming on the inside of the bag. Let's keep moving, I said, tucking the bag into my pack. We've got a lot of trail to cover. But as we continued our patrol, I couldn't stop thinking about those words. When I got back, the time was different. Got back from where? Different how? And why write it so many times? The morning continued uneventfully. We checked the campsites at Deer Lake, made note of a fallen tree that needed to be cleared from a side trail, helped a group of hikers with directions to the hot springs. Normal ranger stuff. But the notebook in my pack felt heavier than it should, a constant weight that kept drawing my attention. Around noon, we stopped for lunch at one of the designated rest areas. The weather had shifted while we'd been walking, clouds rolling in from the coast, bringing with them the promise of rain. The forest darkened, the brief respite of morning sun replaced by the more familiar gray light filtered through heavy cloud cover. Leo unpacked his sandwich while I pulled out the bagged notebook, setting it on the wooden bench between us. "You're still thinking about it," he observed. "Aren't you? It's weird, sure, but weird isn't exactly uncommon out here. People leave stuff all the time. Intentional, unintentional, who knows what motivates them?" He had a point. In 4 years, I'd found everything from grocery store tabloids to expensive cameras just sitting on the trail. People forgot things, dropped things, abandoned things. It happened. But this felt different. "The handwriting," I said, unzipping the evidence bag to examine the notebook again. "It's so consistent. Look at how every W is formed exactly the same way. Every E has the same loop. It's like it was written by a machine." Leo looked over my shoulder, chewing his sandwich thoughtfully. Or someone really obsessive. Maybe someone dealing with OCD or something like that. Repetitive writing can be a compulsive behavior. That was a reasonable explanation, but it didn't explain the water. I touched the pages again, and they were still soaking wet, water pooling in the bottom of the evidence bag. The cover, though, remained completely dry. How is it still this wet? I wondered aloud. We've had it in a sealed bag for 5 hours. It should be starting to dry out, or at least not actively dripping anymore. Maybe the paper is really absorbent, Leo suggested, but he looked uncertain. I pulled out one of the wet pages, feeling the texture. It was standard notebook paper, nothing special. The kind that should absolutely have started drying out by now, especially in a sealed bag that was warming up from being in my pack against my back. "Leo, this doesn't make sense. Physically, this doesn't make sense." He didn't answer right away. He was staring at something behind me, his expression gone suddenly serious. "Maya, don't turn around quickly, but there's someone watching us." My heart rate picked up immediately. "Where?" "In the tree line, about 40 yards behind you. I caught movement a minute ago, thought it was a deer, but it's too tall, too still." I carefully turned my head, making it look casual, like I was just stretching my neck. At first, I didn't see anything. Just trees and undergrowth and the gray light filtering through the canopy. Then, just as I was about to tell Leo he'd been mistaken, I saw it. A figure, standing completely motionless between two massive Sitka spruces. Human-shaped, human-sized, but there was something wrong about the proportions. The way it stood was too rigid, too perfectly still. No one stands that still, not even when they're trying to hide. There's always some small movement, breathing, weight shifting, something. This figure didn't move at all. "Hello," I called out. "If you need assistance, we're park rangers. It's okay to approach us." No response. The figure remained absolutely still. "Sir? Ma'am, are you all right?" Still nothing. It just stood there, a dark shape against the darker trees, watching us. "I don't like this," Leo said quietly. "Something's off about this whole situation." He was right. Between the impossible notebook and the eerily still figure in the trees, the day had taken a turn from routine patrol into something else entirely. I stood up slowly, keeping my eyes on the figure. I'm going to approach. Stay here, keep watching it. If anything happens, Maya, no. We should call this in. Wait for backup. Backup is 2 hours away minimum, you know that, and this person might need help. It was true, but it was also an excuse. Something about that figure compelled me to investigate, to understand. Maybe it was connected to the notebook somehow. Maybe they'd seen who left it. I started walking toward the tree line, my hand instinctively moving to the radio at my belt. This is Ranger Thornwell, approaching a possible distressed hiker on Salduke Trail, mile marker 8. Officer Jansen is maintaining visual contact. Static answered me. That was odd. Radio coverage was usually good in this section. Repeat, this is Ranger Thornwell. Maya? Leo's voice cut through, urgent but quiet. Maya, it's moving. I froze, my eyes locked on the figure. He was right. It was moving, but not in any way a person should move. It wasn't walking or running. It was sliding. Gliding sideways between the trees, always maintaining the same distance from us, never getting closer or farther away. The movement was smooth, unnaturally smooth, like watching a video where someone had edited out all the normal human micro-movements and left only the main motion. What the hell? I breathed. The figure slid behind a tree, and for a moment I thought it was gone. Then it emerged on the other side, except now it was facing a different direction. Not toward us anymore, but toward the trail, toward the spot where we'd found the notebook. And then, just like that, it was gone. Not hidden, not walking away. Just gone. Like someone had flicked a switch and it had ceased to exist. Leo was beside me in seconds, slightly out of breath from jogging over. Did you see that? Tell me you saw that. I saw it. My mouth was dry. Leo, what was that? I don't know. I really, really don't know. We stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where the figure had been. The forest around us was completely silent. No birds, no rustling leaves, nothing. Even the normal background noise of the park had stopped, replaced by a heavy, oppressive quiet. Then, from somewhere ahead on the trail, we heard a sound. Footsteps, running footsteps, coming toward us, fast. A hiker burst into view around the next bend, a young woman in her 20s, her face pale and streaked with tears. She saw us and immediately changed direction, running straight for us. "Help!" she gasped. "Please, you have to help me. My friend. He went back for something he dropped, and now I can't find him, and the time is all wrong." She collapsed onto the bench, sobbing, and I crouched beside her trying to get her to calm down enough to explain. But I'd already noticed something that made my blood run cold. In her hand, she was clutching a piece of paper. Wet paper dripping onto the ground. And on it, written in that same mechanical, precise handwriting, was that same sentence. When I got back, the time was different. The woman's name was Jessica Hartley, 26, from Seattle. She'd come to the park for a day hike with her boyfriend Marcus. That's what she told us through her tears, words tumbling out in a panicked rush that made it hard to follow at first. Leo got her some water from his pack while I tried to calm her down, get her to speak slowly, to tell us exactly what had happened. My radio was still crackling with static, refusing to connect to the ranger station, but Leo's was working. He stepped away to call in the situation while I focused on Jessica. "Okay, Jessica, I need you to take a deep breath for me," I said, using my calmest ranger voice, the one I'd practiced for exactly these situations. "You're safe now. We're here to help. Can you tell me when you last saw Marcus? She nodded, wiping at her face with shaking hands. We were hiking together about an hour ago. Maybe a little more? I don't know. My phone's dead, so I can't check the time. We were just past some waterfall heading back toward the parking lot, and Marcus realized he'd dropped his water bottle somewhere back on the trail. Sol Duke Falls? I asked. That was the main waterfall on this section of trail. I think so, yeah. Big waterfall, lots of spray. We'd stopped there to take pictures. She took a shaky breath. Anyway, Marcus said he'd run back and get the bottle, told me to wait for him. Said he'd be 5 minutes tops. So I waited, and waited. And then what, Jessica? The time changed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I was standing there waiting for him, watching the trail, and then suddenly the light was different. The sun that had been over there, she pointed west, was now over there. She pointed south. Like hours had passed, but I'd only been standing there for a few minutes. I know I was only standing there for a few minutes. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. When I got back, the time was different. That's what the notebook had said, what this piece of paper in her hand said. And that's when you found the paper? I asked, gesturing to the wet note. She looked down at it, as if just now remembering she was holding it. This was on the ground where I'd been standing, just appeared there, I guess. It's so weird, it's soaking wet, but nothing else around it was wet. I picked it up and it had this written on it, and I panicked. Something's really wrong here. Something's wrong with this place. Leo returned, his expression grim. Station's sending backup, but they're tied up with a situation at Deer Lake. ETA is 90 minutes, maybe more. 90 minutes? A lot could happen in 90 minutes, especially if Marcus was lost or injured somewhere on the trail. We need to find Marcus, I said. Jessica, can you walk? Can you show us where you last saw him? She nodded, standing up on shaky legs. I can show you, but I'm telling you, something's wrong with this place. The time, it doesn't work right here. As we gathered our gear, I caught Leo's eye. He gave me a subtle nod toward the bagged notebook in my pack. He was thinking what I was thinking. This wasn't a coincidence. The notebook, the figure in the trees, and now Jessica's story, they were all connected somehow. We started back up the trail at a quick pace, Jessica between us, still clutching that wet piece of paper. I tried my radio again, got nothing but static. My watch, which had been working fine all morning, now showed a time that couldn't be right, 3:47 p.m. But it had been noon when we'd stopped for lunch. Maybe 12:30 at the latest. Even accounting for Jessica's arrival and our conversation, it should only be around 1 p.m. now. Leo, what time do you have? He checked his watch, frowned. 2:15, why? Mine says 3:47. That's not possible. Your watch must have gotten knocked, changed the time somehow. But I hadn't touched my watch, and the sick feeling in my stomach told me this was connected to everything else, another piece of the puzzle we didn't want to solve. We walked in silence, moving faster than normal patrol pace. The forest around us seemed different now, more oppressive. The clouds had thickened, turning the afternoon light gray and flat. Mist was starting to roll in from the coast, tendrils of it reaching through the trees, curling around trunks and across the trail. There, Jessica said suddenly, pointing. That's where I was standing, where I was waiting for him. It was an unremarkable section of trail, nothing to distinguish it from 1,000 other spots in the forest. But as we approached, I noticed something. On the ground, right in the center of the trail, was a wet patch. Not a puddle, not moisture from the mist. A distinct circular wet patch, maybe 2 feet in diameter, as if a bucket of water had been dumped there and only there. Was this here when you picked up the paper? I asked Jessica. She shook her head. I don't think so. I mean, I was pretty freaked out, but I think I would have noticed if I was standing in water. I knelt down, touched the wet spot. The ground was soaked through, water squelching under my fingers. But the surrounding area was relatively dry, just normal forest dampness. This was exactly like what had happened with the notebook. Localized, impossible wetness. Leo, document this. I pulled out my camera, started taking photos while Leo made notes in his field log. The wet spot, the surrounding area, everything. Maya, look at this. Leo was crouching a few feet away, examining the edge of the trail. Footprints. Multiple sets, looks like. Recent, too. I joined him. He was right. There were several sets of boot prints in the soft earth at the trail's edge. But something about them was wrong. They all faced the same direction, pointing off the trail into the forest. And they were all the same size, same tread pattern. Like one person had stepped there multiple times, or... These are all Marcus's prints, Jessica said, looking over our shoulders. I recognize the tread. Those are his merrills. But there were at least 6 prints, all identical, all pointing into the forest in a precise line. Like Marcus had stood there and stepped forward 6 times, each step landing in exactly the same place, pointed in exactly the same direction. This doesn't make sense, Leo muttered. How do you make 6 prints in the same spot? You don't, I said. Not unless... I didn't finish the thought, but we were all thinking it. Not unless time was doing something strange here. Not unless Marcus had stood in that spot at 6 different times, stepping forward in the exact same way each time. We need to follow these, I said, pulling out my GPS. The screen flickered, showing my location as somewhere in Montana. Great, GPS is out too. Mine's working, Leo said, checking his unit. It showed us in the right location, but the trail overlay was glitching, showing multiple versions of the Sol Duke Trail layered over each other at slightly different angles, like a photograph with motion blur. We're going off trail, I decided, following these prints. Jessica, you stay here. If Marcus comes back, or if anyone else comes by, tell them where we've gone. No. Her voice was firm. I'm not staying here alone. Whatever's going on, I'm not staying in this place by myself. I wanted to argue, but looking at her pale, terrified face, I couldn't blame her. If I were a civilian in her position, I wouldn't want to be left alone either. Okay, but you stay between Leo and me at all times. We move as a unit, no separation. Clear? She nodded. We left the trail, following the line of identical boot prints into the forest. The undergrowth here was thick, sword ferns and salal forcing us to push through, branches catching at our clothes. The prints led us in a straight line, undeviating, through terrain that would normally make a person zigzag around obstacles. But Marcus, or whatever had made these prints, had gone straight, through a patch of thorny devil's club that should have torn his legs to shreds, through a massive berry bush that he would have had to literally walk through rather than around, through a log that he couldn't have stepped over without breaking stride. This is wrong, Leo said quietly. These prints shouldn't be possible, not in a straight line like this. I know. I was documenting everything with my camera, taking photos of each impossible print, each obstacle that should have broken the line. Keep moving, we need to find him. The forest grew darker as we walked, the mist thickening into fog. Visibility dropped to maybe 20 feet, then 15, then 10. The prints continued, unwavering in their direction, and then, abruptly, they stopped. We'd come to another clearing, similar to the rest area where we'd eaten lunch. But this one wasn't on any map I'd ever seen. It was perfectly circular, about 30 feet across with no undergrowth at all. The forest floor here was bare earth, packed hard and smooth, like it had been deliberately cleared and maintained. In the center of the clearing was a backpack, Marcus's backpack, according to Jessica, who ran toward it with a cry of relief. "Marcus! Marcus! Are you here?" But there was no one in the clearing except us. Just the backpack, sitting in the exact center like it had been carefully placed there. "Jessica, wait!" I called, but she'd already reached it, was already grabbing it, hugging it to her chest. And that's when I saw them. Notebooks. Scattered around the backpack, arranged in a perfect circle, were dozens of notebooks. All identical to the one I'd found on the trail this morning. All with dry covers and, I was willing to bet, soaking wet pages inside. "Oh my God," Leo breathed. "What is this?" I approached slowly, carefully, aware that we'd walked into something we didn't understand, something potentially dangerous. The notebooks were evenly spaced, exactly the same distance from each other and from the backpack, like someone had used a compass and protractor to arrange them with mathematical precision. I picked up the nearest one, already knowing what I'd find. Dry cover, wet pages, and inside, written in that same mechanical handwriting, when I got back, the time was different. Page after page after page, all the same sentence. "There's something else," Leo said. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, looking at something on the ground. "Maya, you need to see this." I joined him, and my stomach dropped. On the ground, carved deep into the hard-packed earth, were dozens of marks. Tally marks, grouped in sets of 5, covering an area several feet across. I counted them quickly. 48 marks. "Leo, what does that mean?" 48 of what? "I don't know. But look at them. Look at how deep they are, how precisely carved. This took hours. Days, maybe." Jessica was opening the backpack now, pulling out items. "His phone's here, and his wallet, his water bottle, the one he went back for. Everything's here except—" She stopped, her face going white. "Except what?" I asked. "Except his watch. Marcus always wore his watch, never took it off. But it's not here, and there's something else in here that shouldn't be." She pulled out a notebook. Another, identical notebook, wet and dripping, with that same sentence written inside. "He never carried a notebook," she whispered. "Marcus hated paper. Did everything digital. Why would he have this?" The fog was getting thicker now, pressing in around the clearing. The temperature had dropped, our breath visible in the cold air. And somewhere, from somewhere, I could hear something. Footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps, all moving in perfect synchronization, circling the clearing. I couldn't see anyone through the fog, but I could hear them. Could hear the precise mechanical rhythm of feet hitting the ground in exact unison. "We need to leave," I said. "Right now, everyone back to the trail." "But Marcus," Jessica started, "is not here. Whatever this place is, we need to leave it. Now." We ran, or tried to, because as we moved toward what should have been the edge of the clearing, the forest wasn't there anymore. Just more fog, thick and impenetrable. And when we pushed through it, we found ourselves back in the center of the clearing. We tried again, same result. 3 more times, running in different directions, and every time we ended up back at the center, back with the notebooks and the backpack and those ominous tally marks carved into the earth. "We're trapped," Leo said, and I could hear the fear in his voice he was trying to hide. "Maya, we're trapped in here." The footsteps were getting closer now, the rhythm never changing, never faltering. And through the fog, shapes were beginning to form. Human shapes, moving in that same sliding, impossible way the figure on the trail had moved. I pulled out my radio again, praying it would work. Nothing but static. My watch now showed 7:23 p.m. Leo's showed 4:45. Jessica's phone was still dead. When I got back, the time was different. We hadn't gotten back yet. We were still here, in this impossible clearing, surrounded by notebooks filled with warnings we hadn't understood. And somewhere in the fog, Marcus was waiting. Or something that used to be Marcus. Something that wrote the same sentence over and over, that walked in perfect straight lines through impossible terrain, that existed in multiple times at once. The shapes were closer now. I could almost make out faces, almost recognize features. Whatever happens, I told Leo and Jessica, stay together. Don't let go of each other. Don't let the fog separate us. They nodded, and we linked arms, forming a small, terrified triangle in the center of the clearing. The shapes emerged from the fog, and they all had Marcus's face. There were 6 of them. 6 identical versions of Marcus, each one wearing the exact same clothes, each one moving in that unnatural, gliding way. They didn't walk so much as slide across the ground, their feet never quite touching the earth. As they emerged from the fog, they formed a circle around us, evenly spaced, perfectly positioned. Jessica made a sound that was half sob, half scream. "Marcus? Marcus, what's happening?" None of them answered. They just stood there, circling us slowly, their faces blank and expressionless. It was Marcus's face. I could see the similarity to the photo Jessica had shown us from her phone earlier, but there was nothing behind the eyes. No recognition, no personality. Just empty vessels wearing his features like masks. "This isn't real," Leo said, his voice tight. "This can't be real." But it was real. I could feel it, the wrongness of it, the way the air itself seemed to thicken around us. The clearing, the fog, the impossible duplicates, all of it was real, and we were trapped in it. One of the Marcus figures reached into its jacket and pulled out a notebook. Dry cover, I knew without looking. Wet pages inside. It opened the notebook and held it out toward Jessica, showing her that same repeated sentence. "When I got back, the time was different," it said, speaking in Marcus's voice but with no inflection, no emotion. A recording, not a person. "When I got back, the time was different. When I got back, the time was different." The other 5 took up the chant, all speaking in perfect unison. The same words, over and over, echoing off the trees, filling the clearing with that single, terrible sentence. "Stop it!" Jessica screamed, covering her ears. "Stop it! You're not Marcus. You're not him." But they didn't stop. If anything, the chanting grew louder, more insistent. And as they chanted, something began to happen to the clearing itself. The fog pulsed with each repetition of the sentence, growing thicker and then thinner, like the heartbeat of some massive creature. The light shifted wildly. Daytime brightness, then twilight dimness, then full dark, then back to day again, cycling through hours and seconds. My stomach lurched with each shift, vertigo making me stumble. "The time," I gasped, understanding hitting me like a physical blow. "Leo, it's the time." They're trapped in different times, all existing simultaneously. "That's impossible," Leo said. But he was watching his watch face spin wildly, the hands moving forward and backward at random, unable to settle on any single time. "The notebooks," I said, pulling the bagged one from my pack. "The water. It's not water, not exactly, it's time. Liquid time, somehow. That's why it never dries, why it appears on things without any visible source. It's marking things that are caught between times." It sounded insane, saying it out loud. But everything about this situation was insane, and at least my theory explained some of what we were seeing. One of the Marcus figures stopped chanting and looked directly at me. "When I got back," it said, "the time was different. I went to get my water bottle. 5 minutes, I told Jessica, 5 minutes. But when I came back, 3 hours had passed. So I went back again to see if I could find where the time went, But when I came back, 6 hours had passed. So I went back again, and again, and again. It pointed at the tally marks on the ground. 48 times I went back, and every time the time was different. And now I'm all of them, all 48 of me, existing in all 48 times at once. Jessica was sobbing now, her hands clutched tight to Leo's arm. How do we fix this? There has to be a way to fix this. There is no fixing it, the Marcus thing said. There is only recording it, writing it down, over and over so that others will know, will see the warning. It held up the notebook again. When I got back, the time was different. The warnings don't work, I said, anger cutting through my fear. People find them and don't understand. We found one this morning, and we still walked right into this. Then we write more warnings, another Marcus said. Write them until someone understands. Write them forever. Forever, the others echoed. Forever. Forever, forever. The chanting resumed, but now it was just that one word, repeated endlessly. And with each repetition, more figures emerged from the fog. Not all of them were Marcus anymore. I saw other people, other faces, all with that same blank expression. All holding notebooks, all moving in that unnatural glide. There are others, Leo breathed. This has happened to others. How many people have gotten trapped here? I didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to count the figures emerging from the fog, each one a person who'd made the same mistake we'd made, who'd walked into this temporal anomaly and never walked out. But we weren't trapped yet. Not completely. We could still move, still think, still make choices. Whatever had caught Marcus, it hadn't fully caught us. Not yet. The backpack, I said suddenly. Jessica, check the backpack again. Everything was in there except his watch, right? His watch is missing. She nodded, not understanding where I was going with this. Time, I said. It's all about time. His watch is missing because time doesn't work right here. Maybe if we can find the watch, find where the time is anchored, we can break the loop. That's a big maybe, Leo said. You have a better idea? He didn't. None of us did. So while the figures chanted and circled, while the fog pulsed and the light shifted, I started looking, started examining the ground, the notebooks, the backpack, everything in the clearing for anything that might be Marcus's watch. And then I saw it. Not a watch, but watch parts. Scattered around the clearing, half buried in the dirt, were hundreds of pieces of broken watch. The crystal, the band, the internal mechanisms, all separated and distributed across the clearing like some kind of ritual sacrifice. Here, I called to Leo, help me gather these. Maya, what are you doing? I don't know yet, but this feels important. We worked quickly, picking up watch parts while Jessica kept an eye on the circling figures. They didn't try to stop us, just kept up their eternal chanting, but I could feel them watching, could feel their empty eyes tracking our movements. There were too many pieces, way too many. Not just one watch, but dozens, maybe hundreds, all broken down and scattered. Every piece dripping with that impossible water, that liquid time. They all had watches, I realized. Everyone who got caught here, they were all wearing watches. And this place, this temporal anomaly or whatever it is, it broke them down. Literally dismantled time. Okay, so we have watch parts, Leo said. Now what? Good question. I looked at the pieces in my hands, feeling the cold wetness of impossible water on my fingers. These fragments represented all the different times that existed in this place simultaneously, all the different versions of now that were happening at once. But what if we could synchronize them? What if we could take all these different times and force them to agree, to converge on a single point? It was probably impossible. But then again, everything about this situation was impossible, and we were still here, still trying. "Help me arrange these," I said. "In a circle, around us. One piece every foot or so." "Maya, I don't understand." "Neither do I. Not completely. But these pieces are all from different times, right? Different moments when different people got caught here. If we arrange them in a circle, create a barrier of synchronized time around us, maybe we can use it to anchor ourselves, to keep from getting pulled into the loop like Marcus did." It was a theory based on nothing but desperate hope and half-understood physics, but Leo helped me anyway, because what else could we do? We moved quickly, placing watch pieces in a circle around where we stood, each piece still dripping with that temporal water. The Marcus figures watched but didn't interfere. If anything, they seemed curious, tilting their heads in unison like birds observing something unfamiliar. When we completed the circle, something changed. The fog stopped pulsing. The light held steady. My watch, which had been spinning wildly, suddenly locked on a single time, 5:17 p.m. "It's working," Jessica whispered. "Something's working." But the figures weren't happy about it. As one, they stopped chanting and turned to face us fully. The blank expressions shifted, contorted, became something angry and hungry. "You can't leave," they said in unison, dozens of voices speaking as one. "No one leaves, everyone stays, everyone writes, everyone warns. Everyone becomes another tally mark on the ground," Leo added grimly. They started moving toward us, gliding faster now, their hands reaching out. I grabbed Jessica and Leo, pulling them close. "Whatever happens, stay inside the circle. Don't step outside it. Don't let them pull you out." The first figure reached the edge of our circle of watch parts and jerked back like it had hit an invisible wall. It tried again and again, each time being repelled by something it couldn't cross. "It's working," Leo said, relief in his voice. "Whatever you did, it's actually working." But my relief was short-lived, because I could see what was happening to the watch parts we'd arranged. They were dissolving, the metal corroding rapidly, turning to rust and then to dust. Our barrier wouldn't last long. "We need to move," I said, "while we still can. Stay close, stay together, and head for the trail. Don't look at them. Don't listen to them. Just keep moving." We started walking, maintaining our tight formation. The circle of watch parts moved with us, or rather, we stayed at its center as we moved, like walking inside a bubble. The figures followed, pressing against the invisible barrier, their faces contorted with rage and frustration. The fog parted ahead of us, and I could see the forest beyond the clearing. Real forest with normal trees and normal ground and normal air that didn't pulse with temporal energy. "Almost there," I encouraged. "Just a little further." We were maybe 10 feet from the edge of the clearing when I heard it. A watch, ticking. Loud and clear, cutting through the chanting and the fog and everything else. I turned, and there in the center of the clearing, where we'd just been standing, was a watch. Not broken down into parts, but whole and intact, sitting on top of the backpack. Marcus's watch. "It's a trap," Leo said immediately. "Don't go back for it." But as we watched, the watch began to move. Not glide like the figures, but actually walk on tiny legs that had sprouted from its band, scuttling toward us like some kind of mechanical spider. And behind it, the clearing itself was collapsing. The ground was folding in on itself, reality warping and buckling, creating a vortex that was pulling everything toward its center. The figures, the notebooks, the fog, all of it was being drawn into the collapse. "Run!" I shouted. We ran, crashing through the undergrowth, our protective circle of watch parts disintegrating behind us, I could hear the figures screaming, could hear the horrible sound of time tearing itself apart. The watch scuttled after us, ticking frantically, but we were faster. We burst out of the forest and onto the Solduc Trail, stumbling and gasping. Behind us, the forest was silent. No screaming figures, no impossible fog, no walking watch, just normal Olympic National Park, quiet and peaceful in the late afternoon light. I checked my watch, 5:17 p.m. Leo checked his. 5:17 p.m. Jessica checked her now working phone, 5:17 p.m. We'd all synced to the same time. The barrier had worked, had kept us anchored, had let us escape. "Is it over?" Jessica asked, her voice small and scared. Is he gone?" I didn't know how to answer that. Marcus was gone, had been gone the moment he walked back into the forest looking for his water bottle. But what had happened to him? Where he existed now, if he existed at all? I couldn't say. "We need to report this," Leo said. "Need to get this area cordoned off, marked as dangerous somehow." "And tell them what?" I asked. "That there's a temporal anomaly in the forest that traps people in time loops? That people become multiple versions of themselves and write the same sentence over and over in wet notebooks?" "We have evidence," he said, pulling out his field log. "Photos, documentation, Jessica's testimony, the notebook." I checked my pack. The evidence bag was empty. The notebook we'd found that morning was gone, dissolved into temporal water, probably. Or maybe it had never existed at all, was just an echo of a warning from one of the previous victims. "We have nothing," I said tiredly. "No physical evidence except our memories and testimony. Who's going to believe us?" Leo looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew I was right. Our cameras had been glitching in the clearing. Even if the photos had saved, they'd be too corrupted to use as evidence. Our GPS logs showed we'd been in Montana, then Kansas, then underwater in the Pacific. Our watches had all reset to the same time. "We know it happened," Jessica said quietly. "Even if no one else believes us, we know." She was right, and maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all we could do, remember, and warn others when we could, and hope that someday someone would listen. We walked back down the trail together as the sun set, casting long shadows through the forest. Behind us, somewhere in the woods, I imagined I could still hear them. The trapped ones, the time lost, chanting their eternal warning. When I got back, the time was different. But when I turned to look, there was only forest. Only trees and shadows in the gathering dark. And on the trail ahead, sitting in the center of the path, was a notebook. Dry cover. Wet pages. Same sentence, repeated endlessly inside. I didn't pick it up. I just stepped around it and kept walking, leading Jessica and Leo toward safety. Behind us, the notebook sat there in the fading light, waiting for the next person who wouldn't understand, the next person who would ignore the warning and walk into the forest, into the time that wasn't time, into the place where watches break down and people multiply and moments stretch into forever. The Solduc Trail was closed the next day, then reopened a week later. No physical evidence of anomalies, the official report said. No reason to keep it restricted. But I never patrolled that section again, and every time someone asked me for trail recommendations, I steered them away from Solduc, made up excuses, trail conditions, wildlife activity, anything but the truth. Because how do you tell someone that time doesn't work right in certain places? That you can walk 5 minutes into the forest and come back to find hours or days have passed? That there are warnings scattered throughout the woods, written in wet notebooks by people who learn too late what happens when you ignore the signs? You can't. So you don't. You just remember, and carry the weight of that knowledge. and hope that someday someone will figure out how to close the places where time breaks down. Until then, all we can do is write the warnings, over and over, in case someone finally understands. When I got back, the time was different. 3 months later, I was doing paperwork at the ranger station when Leo came in, his face pale. "We need to talk," he said, "privately." We went outside, away from the other rangers, down to the small maintenance shed where we kept trail repair supplies. Leo pulled out his phone and showed me a news article. "Missing hiker found after 3 weeks," the headline read. And below it, a photo, a familiar photo. It was Marcus Hartley, alive, found yesterday morning, walking down Highway 101 about 30 miles from Olympic National Park. No memory of the past 3 weeks, no injuries, no explanation for where he'd been. "That's impossible," I breathed. "We saw what happened to him. He was trapped, split into multiple versions, caught in that temporal loop." "I know." Leo's voice was tight. "But according to this, he's back. Real, solid flesh and blood. Jessica's quoted in the article. She confirmed it's him, confirmed he's alive and back." I read through the article quickly. Marcus had been found by a morning jogger, standing on the side of the highway in his hiking clothes, looking confused. He'd been taken to the hospital, checked out, questioned. His story was that he'd gone back for his water bottle, got turned around in the fog, spent what he thought was a couple of hours trying to find the trail, and then suddenly found himself on the highway with no memory of how he'd gotten there. No mention of time loops. No mention of multiple versions of himself. No wet notebooks. "What does this mean?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe what we saw wasn't real. Maybe it was some kind of mass hallucination caused by something in the forest, spores or gas or—" "You don't believe that?" "No." He put his phone away. "No, I don't. I think we saw exactly what we saw. But I also think Marcus is real and back, which means something happened that we don't understand, something that returned him, reconstituted him somehow." We stood there in silence, trying to process this new information. If Marcus was back, did that mean the others could come back too? All those people whose faces we'd seen in the fog, whose figures had chanted warnings, were they all potentially retrievable? "There's more," Leo said. "Jessica called the station this morning. She wants to talk to us. Says there's something about Marcus that isn't right, something she can't quite explain." "When?" "She's driving up this afternoon. Should be here around 3. I looked at my watch, 1:47 p.m. A perfectly normal time, steady and reliable, not jumping around or spinning backward. But I didn't trust it anymore. Didn't trust any measurement of time, knowing what I knew about how easily it could break down. Jessica arrived exactly at 3, which felt almost aggressive in its punctuality. She looked different than the last time I'd seen her. More composed, less terrified, but with a new wariness in her eyes that suggested the experience hadn't left her unchanged. We met in a private conference room, just the 3 of us. Jessica declined coffee, declined small talk, got straight to the point. "Marcus is back, and he's not back," she said. "Does that make sense?" "Not really," Leo admitted. "Can you explain?" "He looks like Marcus, talks like Marcus, knows everything Marcus knew, our history, his family, his job, everything. But there are these moments where he just stops, like a recording pausing. He'll be mid-sentence and just freeze for a second, maybe 2 seconds, and then continue like nothing happened. And sometimes he says things twice, exact same words, same inflection, like he's skipping backward." The hair on my arms stood up. "How often does this happen?" "Dozens of times a day. Sometimes more. He doesn't seem to notice when it happens. But I notice, and there's something else." She pulled out her phone, showed us a video. "I recorded this last night. The video showed Marcus sleeping. Normal enough. But then, as we watched, his position changed. Not gradually, not like someone rolling over. One frame he was on his left side, the next frame on his right. Then back to left, then flat on his back. All without any motion between positions, just instantaneous changes. "He's skipping," I said, "like a corrupted video file, jumping between frames." "Is he still stuck in that place?" Jessica asked. "Is part of him still trapped in whatever that was?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe he brought some of it back with him, some residue of the temporal distortion. Can it be fixed? Can he be made whole again?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to give her hope. But the truth was, I had no idea. This was so far beyond my understanding, beyond anyone's understanding probably. We were rangers, not quantum physicists or temporal mechanics or whatever specialty would be needed to understand what had happened. "There might be someone who knows," Leo said slowly. "Someone who could help." Jessica and I both looked at him. "The notebooks," he explained. "Someone's writing them, right? Someone who understands what's happening enough to leave warnings. Maybe if we could find out who, or find other warnings, we might get more information." "You want to go back," I said, "back to the trail." "Not back into the clearing, obviously, but along the trail, yeah. Look for more notebooks, see if there's a pattern to where they appear. Maybe talk to other rangers, see if anyone else has found them." It was risky. The Solduke Trail was open again, which meant hikers were using it, which meant more people were potentially at risk. But Leo had a point. If there was information out there that could help Marcus, or prevent this from happening to others, we needed to find it. "Okay," I said, "but we do this carefully. We mark safe zones. We stay on the trail. And at the first sign of anything unusual, we pull out. Agreed?" Leo and Jessica both nodded. We planned the expedition for the following week, giving us time to prepare and research. I spent my off hours digging through old ranger logs, looking for any mention of temporal anomalies, time discrepancies, or missing hikers. What I found was disturbing. The first report dated back to 1974. A park ranger named Thomas Everett had filed a report about finding a perpetually wet journal on the Solduke Trail. The report was marked as anomalous and filed away with no follow-up. Everett himself had disappeared 6 months later while on a solo patrol. Never found. There were more. Throughout the decades, scattered reports of strange findings, wet books, impossible time discrepancies, hikers who returned with no memory of days or weeks. None of it officially connected. None of it investigated properly. Just filed away and forgotten. Until now. The day of our expedition was overcast, but not foggy. We entered the Solduke Trail at dawn. The 3 of us plus 2 other rangers Leo had brought in. People he trusted, who'd agreed to help despite not knowing the full story. We moved slowly, carefully examining the trail for any notebooks or wet spots. For the first few miles, nothing. Just normal forest, normal trail, everything as it should be. Then, at mile marker 7, we found one. A notebook, sitting center trail, dry cover, wet pages. Same sentence inside, repeated endlessly. "Bag it," I instructed one of the other rangers. "Document the exact location, time of finding, everything." We found 3 more over the next 2 hours. All in similar locations. Open sections of trail, no overhead cover, places where there was no reason for anything to be wet. Each one identical to the others. "There's a pattern," Leo said, examining our GPS markers. "They're all on the eastern side of the trail, all within sight of that large moss-covered boulder, like someone's placing them deliberately, using the boulder as a reference point." Or something is generating them, I suggested. Some kind of temporal bleed from the anomaly, creating echoes or copies of the original warning. We followed the pattern, moving along the trail toward where logic suggested the next notebook should appear. And there it was, exactly where we predicted. But this one was different. This one was open, and it was being written in. We approached cautiously. There was no one visible near the notebook, but as we watched, words appeared on the page. Letter by letter, formed by an invisible hand, that same sentence being written over and over. When I got back, the time was different. "Is someone there?" I called out. "If you can hear me, please respond." The writing paused, then, slowly, different words formed on the page. Can't respond. Can't speak. Only write. My heart pounded. "Who are you? Are you Marcus?" "Not Marcus. One of the others. Been here longer. Lost count of how long." "How many of you are there? How many people are trapped?" The pen moved faster now, words forming rapidly. "Don't know. Many. Time is confused. We overlap, exist in multiple moments, can only communicate through writing, through warnings. How do we help you? How do we get you out?" A long pause, then, "Can't get out. Can only warn. Tell people to stay away. Tell them not to follow the wet spots. Don't go looking for what you lost. It's not worth it." "But Marcus got out," I said. "He came back. If he could come back, maybe the rest of you can too. Marcus is not out. Marcus is in between. Part here, part there. He will deteriorate. They always do. Should have stayed on trail. We all should have stayed on trail." The writing stopped. I waited, but no more words appeared. The notebook just sat there, pages fluttering slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. "We need to take this back," Leo said. "Get it analyzed. See if there's any way to trace whoever or whatever is writing it." But when he reached for the notebook, his hand passed right through it. Like it wasn't solid, wasn't fully real. It's a projection, I realized, or an echo, something between times, not quite in our present. We tried several more times to interact with it, but couldn't. It existed just slightly out of phase with our reality, visible but intangible. Jessica was crying quietly. "He's going to deteriorate," that's what it said. "Marcus is going to deteriorate." What does that mean? I thought about the video she'd shown us, Marcus skipping between positions. About the reports I'd read of hikers who'd returned but weren't quite right, who'd faded over time, become less and less solid until they disappeared entirely. "It means we need to find a way to help him," I said. "Soon." We continued our patrol, finding and documenting 5 more notebooks before the trail ended. Each one the same. Each one intangible. Each one a warning from someone trapped between times. Back at the station, Leo and I compiled our findings. The evidence was undeniable now. Something on the Solduke Trail was wrong, had been wrong for decades, was trapping people in temporal loops and leaving echoes of warnings behind. But when we tried to file an official report, we were blocked. The head ranger called us into his office, closed the door, and spoke in a low, serious voice. "I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room," he said. "The service knows about the Solduke anomaly, has known for years. We can't close the trail permanently without explaining why, and we can't explain why without causing panic. So we monitor it, we track the incidents, and we hope that someday someone will figure out how to fix it." "People are dying," I said, anger rising. "Or worse than dying. They're getting trapped, existing in multiple times, losing themselves. I know." His voice was heavy with guilt. "Believe me, I know. But what would you have me do? close the trail and tell people there's a time anomaly in the forest. The park would be shut down, the entire area would become a circus of researchers and conspiracy theorists, and the anomaly might spread, might get worse from all the attention and interference. So we do nothing? Leo asked incredulously. We do what we've always done. We watch. We warn when we can. We document, and we hope. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But I understood the impossible position we were in. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus, about his inevitable deterioration, about all the others trapped in the temporal loop, unable to escape, only able to write warnings that no one truly understood until it was too late. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went for a walk. The ranger station was quiet, everyone else asleep or out on night patrol. I walked down to the equipment room thinking I might do some inventory to clear my head. That's when I saw it. On the table where we'd laid out all the bagged notebooks, there was a new one, sitting right in the center, like it had always been there. But this one was different. This one had my name on the cover. With shaking hands, I picked it up. Dry cover, of course, and when I opened it, wet pages. But the writing inside wasn't the same sentence repeated over and over. It was a message, written directly to me. Maya Thornwell, you're getting too close. The trail is dangerous not just for hikers, but for rangers who ask too many questions. Stop investigating. Stop trying to help. Let the lost stay lost, or you'll join them. This is your only warning. I dropped the notebook, my heart racing. It hit the floor and dissolved, turning to water that spread across the tiles and then evaporated, leaving no trace it had ever existed. Someone, or something, was watching me, knew what I was doing, and didn't want me to continue. The question was, would I heed the warning? Or would I do what rangers always do? Push forward. Try to protect people, even when it meant putting myself at risk. I looked out the window at the dark forest beyond the station. Somewhere out there, on the Solduk Trail, temporal anomalies were trapping people between moments. Marcus was deteriorating. Others were stuck writing warnings no one would understand, and I had a choice to make. The notebook with my name had dissolved, leaving no evidence, but I knew what I'd seen. Knew the threat was real. When I got back to my desk, I opened my computer and started typing. A comprehensive report, everything we'd found, everything we'd seen. If something happened to me, at least there would be a record. At least someone might understand. As I typed, I heard a sound outside. Footsteps, precise and mechanical, circling the station. I looked out the window but saw nothing, just the forest, dark and deep. And somewhere in that darkness, time was breaking down. The clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. My watch read 5:17 p.m. My phone said it was yesterday, and I realized, with a cold certainty that settled in my bones, that I was already caught, already between times. The investigating, the questions, the notebooks, I'd gone too far, learned too much. When I got back, the time was different. I understood now. Finally, terribly, I understood. The warnings were being written by rangers, by people like me who'd investigated, who'd tried to help, who'd gotten too close to the truth. We were the ones trapped. We were the ones writing. We always had been. I picked up a pen and opened a notebook, started writing. When I got back, the time was different. Over and over and over, forever. Night patrol on Rialto Beach is different from anywhere else in Olympic National Park. The ocean never sleeps, never stops its relentless assault on the shoreline. The fog rolls in thick from the Pacific, carrying with it the smell of salt and kelp and something older, something that belongs to deep water and dark places. When you're out there in the middle of the night, with nothing but your flashlight and the sound of waves crashing against the sea stacks, you start to understand why sailors used to believe in sea monsters. My name is Silas Merrigan, and I've been doing beach patrols for 6 years now. Long enough to know that the night shift is when the strange things happen. Long enough to have learned that some questions are better left unasked. But on this particular October night, I was about to learn that some answers find you whether you want them or not. It was just past 11 p.m. when Tara Whitlow and I started our patrol. The tide was going out, leaving behind wet sand that reflected our flashlight beams like dark glass. The fog was heavy, reducing visibility to maybe 30 feet on a good stretch, less when it thickened. We could hear the waves but couldn't see them. Just the endless white wall of mist that seemed to swallow everything. Tara's been my patrol partner for 8 months now, transferred up from the California coast. She's quiet, observant, doesn't waste words, the kind of person you want next to you when things get weird. And on Rialto Beach at night, things always get a little weird. "Campfire at 2 o'clock, Tara said, pointing her flashlight toward a glow in the fog about 100 yards down the beach. I saw it too, a warm orange light flickering through the mist, the unmistakable signature of a campfire. Which was a problem, because fires weren't allowed on this section of beach. Too close to the driftwood piles, too much risk in the dry season even with the constant moisture from the fog. "Let's go have a word with them," I said, adjusting my radio on my belt. Probably just tourists who didn't read the regulations. We started walking toward the glow, our boots crunching on the mixture of sand and small stones. The sound of the ocean was constant, a rhythmic crash and hiss that became white noise after a while. But as we got closer to the campfire, I started to notice something odd. I couldn't hear any voices. No laughter, no conversation, no sound of people at all. Just the ocean and our footsteps, and the steady crackle of burning wood that I should have been able to hear by now, but couldn't. "You hear anyone?" I asked Tara. She shook her head, her expression thoughtful. "No voices, no movement either, just the light." We were maybe 50 feet away now, and I could see the fire clearly through the fog. It looked normal enough, flames dancing, smoke rising, that characteristic orange glow, but something about it felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite articulate. "Hello?" I called out. "Park rangers, if you've got a fire going, we need to talk to you about beach regulations." No response. The fire continued to burn, undisturbed by our approach or our shouting. "Stay close," I told Tara, and we moved forward together, maintaining formation like we'd been trained. At 30 feet, I could see there was no one around the fire. No camping gear, no people, no signs of recent habitation. Just the fire itself, burning in a neat circle on the sand. At 20 feet, I started to notice details that didn't make sense. The flames weren't moving quite right. They flickered and danced, sure, but there was something mechanical about it, like watching a looped video rather than actual fire. At 10 feet, Tara grabbed my arm. "Silas, look at the sand. Look at the base of the fire." I looked. The sand around the fire was dry, completely dry, which was impossible on Rialto Beach at night, with fog this thick. Everything was damp here, always. The moisture got into everything, but this sand was bone dry, like it had been baking in summer sun for hours. "What the hell?" I breathed. We were close enough now that I should have felt heat from the flames. Should have felt the warmth radiating out, drying the moisture on my face, but I felt nothing. Just the cold, damp air of the beach at night. "It's not real," Tara said quietly. "It's not actually burning." She was right. As we took the last few steps forward, the fire didn't get any warmer, didn't cast any heat. And when we were standing right next to it, I could see that there was no wood burning, no fuel source at all. Just flames appearing from nothing, burning nothing. I reached out my hand, slowly, carefully. Tara made a sound of protest, but I needed to know. My fingers passed through the flames. Cold. They were cold. Jesus, I pulled my hand back. Where fire should have burned me, I felt nothing but a slight tingling sensation like touching static electricity. The flames rippled around where my hand had been, but didn't react beyond that. Didn't spread, didn't diminish. Just continued their mechanical dance. "We need to document this," Tara said, pulling out her camera. She started taking photos, the flash illuminating the fog around us in brief, harsh bursts of light. In the photos, I could see the fire looked normal. You couldn't tell from the images that it gave off no heat, that it was somehow not real. "What causes something like this?" I asked, though I didn't really expect an answer. "I don't know. Phosphorescence from decomposing kelp? Some kind of natural bioluminescence, but I've never heard of anything like this on a beach." Neither had I. And I'd been doing this job long enough to know that Rialto Beach had its share of strange phenomena. Weird currents, unusual tidal patterns, sea life that didn't belong this far north. But nothing like this. Nothing that looked like fire, but wasn't. "Look at the ground," Tara said, crouching down. "Underneath where the fire is." I knelt beside her and saw what she meant. The sand beneath the flames wasn't just dry. It had a gray layer on it, like ash. Or not quite ash. It was more compact than ash, more uniform. It looked almost like paint, except it had texture. Felt gritty when I touched it. "It's hot," I said, pulling my finger back. Not burning hot, but warm. Significantly warmer than the surrounding sand. So it is generating some heat, just not radiating it outward. "That doesn't make physical sense," Tara said. "Heat disperses. It doesn't stay contained like this." She was right, of course. But nothing about this situation made sense. We were looking at fire that wasn't fire, that generated heat that didn't spread, that left ash-like residue without consuming any fuel. "We should call this in," I said, reaching for my radio. But before I could key the mic, the fire went out. Not gradually, not dying down. Just gone, like someone had flipped a switch. One moment it was burning. The next moment there was nothing but darkness and fog and the sound of the ocean. Tara and I stood in the sudden dark, our flashlights the only illumination. We'd been so focused on the fire that we'd let our lights drop to our sides. Now we raised them again, scanning the area. The gray layer on the sand remained. And now, without the distraction of the flames, I could see it formed a pattern. Not random scattering like ash would make, but deliberate marks, lines and curves, arranged in a way that suggested meaning, even if I couldn't decipher what that meaning was. "Are those symbols?" Tara asked, playing her light over the marks. They could have been. Or they could have been random patterns that our minds were trying to impose order on. It was hard to tell. The lines were precise, though, too precise to be natural formations. Someone, or something, had made them. "Take more photos," I said. "Get every angle you can." While Tara documented the scene, I stood and scanned the beach around us. The fog was thick, but I could make out the shapes of driftwood piles and the dark mass of sea stacks to our north. Nothing moved except the fog itself, rolling and shifting in the night air. Then I saw it. A light further up the beach. Another fire, burning with that same false flame quality. Maybe 200 yards away, barely visible through the fog. "Tara," I said quietly, "we've got another one." She looked up from her camera, followed my gaze. That wasn't there before. We would have seen it. I know. We should have called it in then. Should have radioed for backup, reported the anomalies, waited for daylight and reinforcements. That would have been the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But we didn't. Because even as we stood there, a third light appeared, then a fourth, then a fifth. All up and down the beach, spaced at irregular intervals, cold fires burning in the fog. "What is this?" Tara whispered. I didn't answer because I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we were standing on Rialto Beach at midnight, surrounded by impossible fires, and the fog was getting thicker. "We need to check them," I said. "See if they're all the same, if they all have those marks underneath." "Silas, I don't think that's a good idea. This feels wrong. All of this feels very wrong." She wasn't wrong. Every instinct I had was screaming that we should leave, should get back to the patrol vehicle and call this in from a safe distance. But another part of me, the part that had been a ranger for 6 years, that took pride in understanding the park and its mysteries, needed to know what was happening. "One more," I said. "We'll check one more fire, then we call it in. Agreed?" Tara looked like she wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "One more. The closest one. Then we're out of here." We started walking toward the nearest fire, the one I'd spotted first. It was north of our position, back the way we'd come. As we walked, I kept checking the fires around us. They remained constant, burning with that same cold, mechanical quality. The fog was definitely getting thicker. By the time we reached the second fire, visibility had dropped to maybe 15 feet. Our flashlights created weak cones of light that the fog seemed to absorb. This fire was identical to the first. Same size, same cold flames, same gray residue underneath arranged in patterns I couldn't quite read. Tara photographed it while I examined the marks more closely. "Silas, these aren't random," she said. "Look at this curve here and this line. They're deliberate. Someone made these. But who? And why? And how did they make fires that aren't really fires? I don't know. But I'm starting to think this isn't natural. This is something someone is doing, deliberately." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold ocean air. The idea that someone was out here in the fog, creating these impossible fires, leaving these strange marks, that was somehow more frightening than if this had been some unexplained natural phenomenon. "We're calling it in," I said, pulling out my radio. "Right now. This is beyond weird. This is—" I stopped, because as I raised the radio to my mouth, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Between us and where we'd left the first fire, standing in the fog maybe 20 yards away, was a figure. It was human-shaped, human-sized, but there was something wrong about it. It stood too still, its proportions slightly off in a way I couldn't quite pinpoint, and it was dark, darker than the fog around it, like a hole cut in the world. "Tara," I said quietly, not taking my eyes off the figure. "Do you see that?" "I see it." Her voice was tight. "Silas, that wasn't there a second ago. I was looking that direction. Nothing was there." The figure didn't move, didn't react to our voices or our flashlights, which we were now both pointing directly at it. The beams seemed to be absorbed by it, not reflecting or illuminating anything, just disappearing into that dark shape. "Hello?" I called out. "This is the Park Service. Identify yourself." No response. The figure remained motionless, a dark statue in the fog. "Sir or ma'am, we need you to respond. If you're in distress, we can help you." Still nothing. Just that terrible stillness. That complete absence of movement that no living thing should be able to maintain. "We're approaching," I told Tara. "Slow and steady. Stay behind me." Silas, I really don't think... I know. But we can't just leave it there. It could be someone who needs help. It was a weak justification, and we both knew it. But what else could we do? We were rangers. Our job was to help people on this beach, even people who appeared in impossible ways and stood too still in the fog. We started walking toward the figure, our lights trained on it. With each step, I expected it to move, to react, to do something. But it remained frozen, a dark silhouette that seemed to absorb light and sound and warmth. At 15 yards, I could start to make out more details. Or rather, I could start to notice the absence of details. The figure had no face, no features. Just a smooth, dark surface where a head should be. No eyes, no mouth, nothing. Silas, Tara's voice was shaking now. That's not a person. That's not a person. She was right. Whatever we were looking at, it wasn't human. But it was still standing there, still somehow aware of us, even without eyes. At 10 yards, the figure moved. Not like a person moves, like video footage skipping frames. One moment it was standing facing us, the next moment it was facing the ocean, turned 90 degrees without any motion in between. Just instant repositioning. What the hell? I breathed. The figure remained in its new position for a moment, then turned again. Another 90-degree rotation. Instantaneous. Impossible. Now it faced north toward where more of the cold fires burned in the fog. It's showing us something, Tara said. Pointing us somewhere. Or leading us somewhere, I added. The question is, do we follow? Before Tara could answer, the figure started moving. Not walking, not exactly. It was more like it was sliding across the sand, its dark form gliding smoothly without any visible means of propulsion. It moved toward the north, toward the fires, and as it moved, a new fire sprang up directly in its path. The figure passed through the fire without slowing, without reacting. The cold flames parted around it like curtains, then resumed their mechanical burning once it had passed. We're not following that, Tara said firmly. Silas, whatever this is, whatever is happening here, we are not following that thing into the fog. She was right. This had gone far beyond strange and into dangerous. We needed to get back to the vehicle, call for backup, let someone with more resources and expertise deal with this. Agreed, I said. We're heading back. Now. We turned to leave, to retrace our steps back to where we'd parked, but the fog had shifted, had thickened, and I couldn't see our boot prints anymore. Couldn't see the landmarks we'd passed on our way here. Which way? Tara asked, playing her light around us in a full circle. I pulled out my compass, but the needle was spinning wildly, refusing to settle on any direction. My GPS was showing us somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 3 miles offshore. Equipment's not working, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. The fog must be interfering with the electronics somehow. Fog doesn't do that, Tara said. Fog doesn't interfere with compasses or GPS. Silas, what is happening? I didn't have an answer. All around us, the cold fires burned. The dark figure had disappeared back into the fog. And we were lost on a beach we'd patrolled dozens of times, unable to determine which direction led back to safety. Then, from somewhere in the fog, I heard it, a voice calling out, faint and distant, but definitely human. Help! Someone please help me! Tara and I exchanged glances. You heard that? I asked. She nodded. South. It came from the south. We started moving toward the voice, our lights sweeping ahead of us. The cold fires flickered as we passed them, and in their false light I caught glimpses of shapes in the fog. More figures, standing silent and still, watching us with eyeless faces. I don't like this, Tara said. This feels like a trap. I know. But if there's someone out here who needs help, help, please, I'm lost. I can't find the trail. The voice was clearer now, more desperate. It sounded like a man, middle-aged maybe, genuinely frightened. Every ranger instinct I had told me we needed to help him. But another part of me, a deeper, more primal part, was screaming that this was wrong, that we were being lured, that the voice was bait. We rounded one of the massive driftwood piles that dotted Rialto Beach, our lights leading the way. And there, on the other side, we found him. A man, sitting on a log, his head in his hands. He was dressed in hiking gear, looked normal enough. When our lights hit him, he looked up, relief washing over his face. "Oh, thank God," he said. "I've been lost for hours. The fog came in and I couldn't find my way back to the parking lot. I tried following the beach, but everything looks the same." "Sir, are you injured?" I asked, approaching carefully. "Do you need medical attention?" No, I'm fine. Just lost and cold." He stood up, and that's when I noticed. He wasn't casting a shadow. Our flashlights were pointing right at him, should have created a clear shadow on the sand behind him. But there was nothing, just uniform darkness. "Tara," I said quietly. The shadow. She'd seen it too. I could tell by the way she'd tensed, by the way her hand had dropped to her radio. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm going to need you to stay where you are for a moment." "What? Why?" "I just want to get back to my car. Can't you just point me in the right direction?" "In a moment. First, I need to verify some information." "What's your name?" "What does that matter? I'm lost, I need help, and you're asking me questions?" His voice rose, took on an edge of anger. Or something pretending to be anger. "Standard procedure, sir. Now, your name?" He stared at me for a long moment, and then, slowly, his face began to change. Not physically, not in any way I could point to. But the expression shifted, settled into something that wasn't quite human. Something that had been pretending to be human but wasn't very good at it. "You should have followed the fires," it said. And its voice wasn't one voice anymore but many, layered over each other. "You should have followed when you had the chance. Now you're here, and here is where you'll stay." The man shape dissolved into fog, and we were alone again. But we weren't alone. All around us, I could hear them now. Footsteps, dozens of them circling our position in the dark. And between each set of footsteps, a cold fire sprang up, until we were surrounded by a perfect ring of burning not burning flames. "Silas," Tara's voice was barely a whisper. "What do we do?" I looked at the ring of fires, at the shapes moving in the fog beyond them, at the gray residue on the sand that formed patterns I was starting to understand meant something terrible. "We survive," I said. "Whatever this is, whoever they are, we survive until dawn." Because dawn had to come eventually. The sun would rise, the fog would burn off, and surely these things, whatever they were, would disappear in the daylight. Right? The footsteps drew closer, and I held my flashlight like a weapon, knowing it wouldn't help but needing something solid in my hands. The night was far from over. The ring of cold fires burned around us, each one exactly the same distance from where Tara and I stood back to back in the center. I counted them, 12 fires, evenly spaced, forming a perfect circle. The gray residue beneath each one connected to form an unbroken line, a boundary drawn in something that looked like ash, but wasn't. "Don't step on the line," I said to Tara, though I wasn't sure why. Just instinct. The same instinct that told me crossing that threshold would be a very bad idea. "Wasn't planning on it," she replied. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath. We were both terrified, but we were also professionals. Fear wouldn't stop us from doing our job. The shapes in the fog continued their circling. I could hear them, but not see them clearly. Just dark suggestions of movement. Shadows within shadows. The footsteps maintained a perfect rhythm, never faltering, never rushing. Patient, methodical, like they had all the time in the world. "Talk to me, Silas," Tara said. "Tell me you've seen something like this before. Tell me there's a rational explanation." "I've never seen anything like this." As for rational explanation, I trailed off. What could I say? That we were surrounded by entities that appeared human but weren't. That they could create fire that wasn't fire, that cast no heat and consumed no fuel. That they seemed to be bound by their own rules, unable or unwilling to cross the circle they'd created. "Your silence is not reassuring," Tara said. "I know, I'm working on it." I pulled out my radio again, tried to raise the ranger station. "This is Merrigan, Rialto Beach Night Patrol. We have a situation. Requesting immediate backup." Static answered me, but through it, I thought I heard words. Distant, distorted, but there. "Not where you circle. Don't repeat that," I said into the radio. "You're breaking up. Can you confirm backup?" More static, then clearer this time. "Don't trust the circle." The voice cut off. The radio went dead. The LED lights on its face dimming and then going dark completely. "Mine's dead too," Tara said, checking her own radio. "Batteries shouldn't die like that. They were fully charged. Something's draining them. The same thing that's interfering with our compass and GPS." I looked at my watch. The digital display flickered, showing times that couldn't be right. 2:47 a.m., then 11:32 p.m., then 4:16 a.m., cycling through hours at random. "We can't trust any of our equipment," I said. "We don't know how long we've been here, what time it really is, or which direction leads back to the vehicle." "So what do we do? Just stand here until dawn, if dawn even comes?" It was a fair question. For all we knew, we could be trapped in some pocket of suspended time where dawn would never arrive. But I pushed that thought away. It wasn't helpful, wasn't productive. "We observe," I said. "We document what we can, try to understand what's happening. There has to be a pattern, a logic to this. Even if it's not logic, we understand. Silas, we're surrounded by things that aren't human creating fires that aren't real. I'm not sure logic applies here. Everything has logic. We just need to figure out what theirs is." As if responding to my words, one of the figures stepped forward, moving to the very edge of the circle. Close enough now that our flashlights could illuminate it clearly. It was the dark figure from before, the one that had appeared and disappeared, that moved in impossible ways. But now, in the light of the cold fires and our flashlights, I could see it more clearly. See that it wasn't solid, wasn't substantial. It was more like a concentration of darkness, a shadow that had learned to stand upright. "Can you communicate?" I called out to it. "If you can understand me, give some sign." The figure tilted its head, a gesture that should have been inquisitive, curious, but was somehow wrong. The angle was too sharp, the movement too precise. Not mechanical, but not organic either. Something else. Then it raised one arm, pointing, not at us, but past us, toward the ocean, toward the sound of waves that I'd almost forgotten in the chaos of the last hour. "What's it pointing at?" Tara asked, turning to look. I followed the direction it indicated. The fog was still thick, but I could make out the dark shapes of sea stacks rising from the beach. And beyond them, barely visible, something else. A light, but not a cold fire. This was different, warmer, more yellow, like a lantern or flashlight. "There's someone else out here," I said. someone outside the circle. Or something pretending to be someone, Tara countered, like that fake hiker. She was probably right. But what if she wasn't? What if there really was another person out there? Someone who'd wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time who needed help? The figure lowered its arm and stepped back, melting into the fog. The footsteps around us stopped. The cold fires flickered, their flames dancing in patterns that almost looked like language. "They want us to go to the light," I said. "That's what this is. A choice, stay in the circle or go toward the light." "Stay in the circle," Tara said immediately. The radio voice said don't trust the circle, which means we definitely shouldn't trust what's outside the circle. But the voice also said we're not where we think we are. What if the circle is the trap? What if staying here is exactly what they want? Or what if leaving is what they want and they're trying to trick us? We were going in circles, pun intended. The truth was, we didn't have enough information to make an informed decision. We were guessing, hoping, gambling with our lives based on incomplete data and fear. The light in the distance moved, swung back and forth like someone waving a lantern. And then, faintly, I heard a voice. "Hello? Is someone there? I saw your flashlights." A woman's voice, clear and human-sounding. Not layered, not distorted. Just a normal person, calling out in the fog. "This could be real," I said. "Tara, this could actually be someone who needs help. Or it could be another trap, another fake person trying to lure us out." "I know, but hello? Please, I'm lost. I can't find my camp. If you're rangers, I need help." The desperation in the voice was convincing. Too convincing. Or genuinely authentic. There was no way to know without checking. "I'm going," I said, making the decision. "I'm going to check on that voice. You stay here, keep the circle marked. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, absolutely not," Tara interrupted. "We don't split up. That's horror movie 101, Silas. We don't split up. But if we both leave, then we both leave, together. Like we should have been doing this whole time." She was right, splitting up would be stupid. But stepping outside the circle felt like stepping off a cliff. You couldn't take it back once you committed. "Okay," I said, "together. But we move fast, check on the voice, and if anything feels wrong, we run. Straight toward the ocean, into the water if we have to. Agreed?" "Agreed. On 3? On 3. We counted together, our voices synchronized. 1, 2, 3. We stepped over the line of gray residue, crossed the boundary of the circle. And immediately, everything changed. The fog lifted, not completely, but enough that I could suddenly see much further than before. The cold fires went out, all of them simultaneously, leaving us in darkness illuminated only by our flashlights and that distant lantern light. And the sound changed. The ocean was louder now, much louder, like we'd suddenly been transported much closer to the water. I could hear waves breaking, could feel spray on my face even though we were still well back from the tide line. "Did we just," Tara started, "move? Yeah. We moved somehow. Or the world moved around us." The voice called again, closer now. "I see your lights. Please wait. I'm coming to you." I pointed my flashlight toward where the voice was coming from, and saw the lantern light bobbing toward us through the fog. Behind it, a figure, human-shaped, moving in a way that looked natural, looked right. No gliding, no impossible angles. Just someone walking across a beach at night. As she got closer, I could make out more details. A woman, maybe in her 50s, wearing a raincoat and hiking boots. Her face was flushed from exertion, her hair wild from the wind and fog. She looked real, solid, human. "Oh, thank God," she said when she reached us, slightly out of breath. I've been wandering for an hour. I was camping up by the tree line and I needed to use the facilities and I got turned around in the fog. I couldn't find my tent, couldn't find the trail, couldn't find anything. Are you rangers? We are, I said carefully, studying her face for any signs of wrongness. Ma'am, I need you to answer some questions for me. What's your name? Linda. Linda Morrison. Is this really necessary? I just want to get back to my tent. What day is it, Miss Morrison? What? It's Thursday, October 15th. Why are you asking me this? The date was right. At least it was the date I remembered it being when we started our patrol. That was something. And you're camping alone? Yes, I'm doing a solo hike. Look, I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. I just got a little lost in the fog. It happens. Can you just point me toward the campground? She sounded annoyed now, frustrated. A normal, human reaction to being questioned instead of helped. But that could be exactly what something pretending to be human would do. Mimic irritation. Mimic normal human emotions. Tara, can you take a photo? I asked. Standard documentation for found hikers. Sure. Tara raised her camera, pointed it at Linda. The flash went off. Linda didn't show up in the photo. I couldn't see the screen from where I stood, but I saw Tara's face go pale. Saw her take 2 quick steps backward. What's wrong? Linda asked, but her voice had changed. The annoyed edge was gone, replaced by something flat, dead. You don't have a reflection, Tara said, her voice shaking. You don't show up in photographs. Interesting, Linda said, and her face began to change. Or rather, it began to reveal what had been there all along. The human features melted away like wax, revealing the same smooth, dark surface we'd seen on the figure in the circle. You're clever. More clever than the others. Others? I asked. What others? How many people have you? Enough, Linda Thing interrupted. Enough to know the patterns. Enough to learn the behaviors. You're not the first rangers to patrol this beach at night. You won't be the last. The fog thickened again, pressing in from all sides. More figures emerged from it, surrounding us, all with the same smooth, dark faces, all standing in that too still way. What do you want? Tara demanded. What are you? We are the space between things, the Linda Thing said. The gap between waves, the silence between words. We don't want anything. We simply are. Then why lure us out here? Why the fires, the circle, the tricks? Because that's what we are. The tricks, the lures, the spaces where people get lost. This beach is ours, has always been ours. You're just visiting. The figures started moving toward us, closing in from all sides. Their movements were no longer mechanical or gliding. Now they walked like humans, ran like humans, moved with purpose and speed that was terrifyingly natural. Run, I shouted to Tara, toward the water. We ran. Our boots pounded on the sand, our breaths coming in gasps. The figures followed, matching our pace effortlessly. They didn't try to grab us, didn't reach out. They just herded us, drove us toward the water like wolves driving prey. The sound of the waves grew deafening. I could see white foam now, see the dark mass of the ocean ahead. And I realized with growing horror what they were doing. They were driving us into the sea. Stop, I shouted, skidding to a halt just feet from where waves crashed onto the shore. Tara, stop! She stopped beside me, panting. We turned to face the figures, our backs to the ocean. There was nowhere left to run. The Linda Thing emerged from the group of figures standing at the front. You chose wrong, it said. You left the circle. You came when called. You ran when chased. All the wrong choices. What were the right choices? I asked, playing for time. trying to think of a way out. There were no right choices. That's the point. The circle was a trap. Leaving the circle was a trap. Staying on the beach is a trap. Everything here is a trap for those who come at night. Why tell us this? Why explain? Because you asked. Because the rules say we must answer when questioned properly. Because you're not leaving anyway, so it doesn't matter what you know. The figures moved closer. Behind us, a wave crashed, sending cold spray across our backs. We were out of room, out of options, out of time. "I'm sorry," I said to Tara. "I'm sorry I got you into this." "Not your fault," she replied. "We both chose to investigate. We're rangers. It's what we do." The figures were almost within arm's reach now. I could feel the cold radiating from them, could see the absolute darkness of their surfaces that absorbed light without reflecting anything back. And then, from somewhere up the beach, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong, that cut through everything else. A siren, distant but getting closer. The sound of our backup finally arriving. The figures stopped, turned to look toward the sound. And in that moment of distraction, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Dawn. The faintest hint of gray light on the eastern horizon barely visible through the fog. It was almost morning. "Hold on," I whispered to Tara. "Just hold on a little longer." The siren grew louder, and with it more lights, flashlights, searchlights, cutting through the fog. Voices calling our names. Real voices, human voices, backed by the sound of engines and radios and all the mechanical noise of the waking world. The figures began to fade. Not retreating, not running, just fading, becoming less solid, less present. Like shadows dissipating and growing light. The Linda thing looked at me one last time. "We'll be here," it said. "We're always here, and you'll come back. They always come back." Then it was gone, and we were alone on the beach with the sound of sirens getting closer and the pale light of dawn beginning to chase away the dark. The backup team found us standing at the water's edge, soaked from sea spray, shaking from cold and adrenaline. The lead ranger was someone I knew. Marcus Holloway, a 15-year veteran who'd pulled more than his share of night shifts on Rialto Beach. "Merrigan, Whitlow, what the hell happened out here?" He jogged toward us across the sand, his team fanning out behind him. "Your radios went dead 3 hours ago. We've been searching since midnight." 3 hours? I checked my watch, but it was still flickering through random times, useless. "What time is it now?" 6:15. Sun's about to come up. Seriously, what happened? You both look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," Tara said quietly. "I don't know what we saw." Marcus looked between us, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. "Did you get injured? Disoriented in the fog? There's a lot of fog tonight. Probably some of the thickest I've seen in years." "We need to check the beach," I said, finding my voice. "There were fires. Cold fires that didn't give off heat. And figures, entities, things that looked human but weren't. They left marks on the sand, patterns in gray residue." Marcus exchanged glances with his team. I could see what they were thinking. Hypothermia, maybe, causing confusion and hallucinations. Or exhaustion. Or stress. "Okay," Marcus said carefully. "Let's get you two into the vehicles, warm you up, and then we can come back and check the beach systematically. Sound good?" "No," Tara said firmly. "We check now, while the evidence is still here, before the tide comes in and erases everything." She was right. The tide was turning, starting to come back in. In an hour, the beach would look completely different. Any marks left on the sand would be washed away. "All right," Marcus agreed. "Show us what you found. But if either of you starts showing signs of hypothermia, I'm pulling you off this beach. Non-negotiable." We led them back toward where we'd first seen the cold fires, retracing our steps as best we could. The fog was thinning now with the approaching dawn, visibility improving with each passing minute. "It was here," I said, stopping at a spot that felt right. "Right here." There was a fire burning. Not a real fire. It gave off no heat, consumed no fuel, and underneath it, on the sand, there was this gray layer with marks in it. Marcus and his team examined the spot. I could see them exchanging more skeptical glances. "There's nothing here, Silas," Marcus said gently. "Just normal sand, no burn marks, no ash, no residue of any kind." "But it was here, we both saw it." I turned to Tara. Tell them about the fires." "There were fires," Tara confirmed, but her voice was uncertain now. "At least, I thought there were. Cold flames arranged in circles, and the figures, the shadows that moved wrong." "You thought there were?" Marcus pressed. "Tara, you're not sure anymore?" I'm sure we saw something. I have photos. Look." She pulled out her camera, started cycling through the images, but her face fell as she looked at the screen. "They're gone. The photos of the fires, the marks, even the one I took of that woman who turned out to be something else. They're all gone." "Equipment malfunction," Marcus suggested. "Happens in heavy fog sometimes, especially with the salt air. Moisture gets in, corrupts the memory cards." "What about our radios?" I asked. "They went completely dead. Brand new batteries, fully charged, and they just died." One of Marcus's team members, a younger ranger named Jessica, held up my radio. "Battery's fine, sir. I just checked. Radio's functioning normally." That was impossible. I'd watched the LED lights dim and die, felt the unit go dead in my hand. But now, apparently, it was working perfectly. "I want to check further up the beach," I said. There were more fires, more marks, a whole circle of them, and beyond that, there were figures. "Silas," Marcus interrupted gently, "listen to me. You and Tara have been out here alone for 5 hours in thick fog and near freezing temperatures. It's easy to get disoriented, to see things that aren't there. It happens to experienced rangers all the time. There's no shame in it." "We're not hallucinating," I insisted. "Something happened here, something real. The figures told us. They said this beach is theirs, that we were in their space. They told you?" Marcus's expression shifted to real concern now. "Silas, you're saying you had conversations with these figures." I realized how it sounded. How it all sounded. Two rangers, lost in the fog, claiming to see impossible fires and talk to shadow creatures. Textbook symptoms of exposure and disorientation. But it had been real. I knew it had been real, didn't I? "Let's get them back to the station," Marcus said to his team. "Full medical check, warm fluids, rest. We'll do a daylight sweep of the beach once the fog lifts completely, see if there's anything unusual." "I'm not crazy," I said. "Tara, tell them. We both saw the same things. We can't both be hallucinating." But Tara was staring at her camera, scrolling through empty photo slots where images should have been. "I don't know anymore, Silas. Maybe we did get disoriented. Maybe the fog and the cold affected us more than we realized." "You don't believe that. You can't believe that. You were there. You saw—" "I saw something," she interrupted. "But I don't know what I saw, and right now, I don't trust my own memories." They led us back to the vehicles, Marcus keeping a supportive hand on my shoulder, like I was a patient who might collapse at any moment. Maybe I was. Maybe Tara and I had both experienced some kind of shared delusion brought on by environmental factors. But as we walked, I looked back at the beach behind us, and in the growing morning light just for a moment, I saw them, standing in a line at the water's edge watching us leave. The dark figures, the space between things, whatever they were still there, still watching, still waiting for night to fall again. I didn't mention it to Marcus, didn't point them out to anyone, because by the time I blinked and looked again, they were gone. And I was starting to doubt whether they'd ever been there at all. At the ranger station, a medical technician checked us over. Mild hypothermia, he concluded. Dehydration. Exhaustion. Nothing serious, nothing that a few hours of rest and warmth wouldn't fix. You're lucky you made it through the night, he told us. Temperatures dropped to near freezing, and that fog can be deadly. People have died on that beach in conditions like that. People have died, I repeated. How many people? How many have died on Rialto Beach at night? The tech shrugged. I don't have exact numbers, but it's happened. Every few years, someone goes out at night, gets lost in the fog, and by the time we find them, he trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. After he left, Tara and I sat in the break room, wrapped in blankets, drinking hot coffee that tasted like salvation. We didn't speak for a long time. What was there to say? Finally, Tara broke the silence. Do you really think we hallucinated all of it? No, I said honestly. I think something happened out there, something real. But I also think we're never going to be able to prove it. The photos are gone. The radio malfunction turned out to not be a malfunction. There's no evidence of anything unusual on the beach. It's like it never happened. Or like it was designed to leave no evidence, I suggested. They said this was their beach, their space. Maybe they have ways of covering their tracks, of making sure people don't believe. That's paranoid thinking, Silas. Maybe. Or maybe it's the truth. Tara set down her coffee cup, looked at me seriously. Are we going to report this? The full details, I mean. Not just the "we got lost in the fog" version. Would you believe us if you were reading the report? No, she admitted. I probably wouldn't. Then there's your answer. We filed a sanitized version of the night's events. Got lost in fog, equipment malfunction, backup called, rescued at dawn. All true, technically. Just leaving out the impossible parts. Marcus pulled me aside before I left for the day. Silas, I'm recommending you take a few days off. After a night like that, you need to decompress, get your head straight. I'm fine. You're not fine. You saw things last night that your rational mind can't process, so it's trying to create explanations that make sense, even if those explanations involve shadow creatures and cold fires. That's trauma, Silas. That's your brain trying to cope with a terrifying experience. Maybe he was right. Maybe my mind had taken a simple case of getting lost and disoriented and built it into something more. Something that felt less like a failure of my ranger skills and more like an encounter with the unknown. But I didn't think so. I remembered too clearly. The cold fires, the figures, the Linda Thing's voice saying, "We're always here." I'll take the time off, I agreed. But Marcus, do me a favor, pull the incident reports for Rialto Beach. All of them, going back as far as you can. Missing hikers, unexplained deaths, rangers reporting unusual phenomena. I want to see if there's a pattern. Marcus hesitated. Silas, that sounds like obsession. That sounds like someone who can't let go of a traumatic experience. Maybe, but humor me, please. Fine. I'll pull the reports, but you're taking those days off, and you're talking to the department psychologist before you come back to work. Those are my conditions. I agreed. What choice did I have? 3 days later, Marcus gave me a folder. Thick, heavy, filled with decades of incident reports from Rialto Beach. I took it home, spread the papers across my dining room table, and started reading. What I found made my blood run cold. The patterns were there, buried in the dry language of official reports. Rangers noting strange lights on the beach at night. Hikers reporting feelings of being watched, followed, herded. Equipment malfunctions. Radios dying, compasses spinning, GPS units showing impossible locations. And disappearances. So many disappearances. People who'd camped on Rialto Beach and were never seen again. Or people who were seen again, who stumbled out of the fog days later with no memory of where they'd been. Who died within weeks of mysterious causes. Heart failure, stroke. Natural causes that shouldn't have affected people so young and healthy. I found reports from rangers going back to the 1970s. Different names, different dates, but describing similar experiences to what Tara and I had gone through. Cold fires, dark figures, circles on the sand. And in every case, the ranger involved either transferred off the beach detail within months or died in an unrelated accident within a year. I was still staring at the papers when my phone rang. It was Tara. "Silas, I need you to tell me something," she said without preamble. "Tell me you don't believe what Marcus said. Tell me you know what we saw was real." I know it was real. Thank God. The relief in her voice was palpable. I've been going crazy, doubting myself, wondering if I imagined it all, but I didn't, did I? We both saw the same things. We did. And Tara, it's not the first time. I've been going through old reports. This has been happening for decades. Has anyone ever figured out what they are? These things on the beach? No. Or if they have, they didn't write it down. Every ranger who experienced it either convinced themselves it was hallucination, or left the job, or... I didn't finish the sentence. Or died, Tara completed. They died, Silas. Are we next? I don't know. But the Linda thing said we'd come back, that they always come back. Why would we go back? After what happened, why would anyone go back? I don't know that either, but I think we're going to find out. Because the thing was, I wanted to go back. Despite the fear, despite the danger, part of me was pulled toward Rialto Beach at night. Wanted to see the cold fires again. Wanted to understand what the figures were, what they wanted. "When do you go back on duty?" Tara asked. "Another 4 days. You?" "Same. Silas, when we do go back, we're not going to the beach at night, right? We're going to stick to daylight patrols. Stay safe. Stay away from whatever those things are?" I should have said yes. Should have agreed that we'd avoid night patrols, that we'd transfer to a different sector, that we'd do everything we could to stay away from Rialto Beach after dark. But I didn't, because I knew with absolute certainty that we were going back, that we had to go back, that the story wasn't over. "I'll see you in 4 days," I said instead. After we hung up, I went back to the incident reports, and at the bottom of the stack, I found something that made my hands shake. A report from 1978. A ranger named Thomas Everett describing an encounter with entities composed of concentrated shadow on Rialto Beach. Describing cold fires, circles in the sand, figures that led him into a trap. But Thomas's report had something ours didn't. It had a theory. These entities appeared to exist in liminal spaces, the boundary between land and sea, between night and day, between consciousness and sleep. They are not malicious, but they are dangerous, like a riptide is dangerous. They simply are what they are, and humans who enter their space do so at their own risk. The question is not what they want, but what we become when we interact with them. I believe exposure to these entities causes a fundamental change in human consciousness, an opening of perception to things that should remain closed. I believe I am changing. I believe I will continue to change. I do not know if this is good or bad. I only know it is irreversible." The report ended there. I looked up Thomas Everett in the Ranger database. He'd died 3 months after filing that report. Drowning, the official cause said. His body was found on Rialto Beach at low tide, though there was no water in his lungs. I put the folder aside and walked to my window, looked out at the night. Somewhere to the west, past the forests and hills, Rialto Beach waited. The entities waited. The cold fires burned in the darkness, visible only to those who knew to look. And I knew, with a certainty that felt like doom and destiny combined, that I would go back. That both Tara and I would go back. Because Thomas Everett was right. We were changing, already changed. The boundary between us and them had been crossed, and there was no uncrossing it. When I got back, the time would be different. When I got back, everything would be different. The question was, would I still be me? The 4 days passed like a fevered dream. I barely slept, and when I did, I dreamed of cold fires and dark figures. I dreamed of standing on a beach that was and wasn't Rialto, listening to voices that spoke in languages made of silence. I called Tara on day 3. "Have you been sleeping?" "Not really. You?" "No. Are you having the dreams?" A pause, then, "Yes." The fires, the circles. And something else, a feeling like I'm being pulled somewhere, like there's a fishhook in my chest dragging me toward the beach. I feel it too. Tara, Thomas Everett wrote that exposure to these entities causes irreversible changes. What if we're already changing? What if we can't stay away even if we want to? Then what do we do? Quit? Transfer? Run as far from the coast as we can? Would that work? Would the pull stop if we left? Neither of us had an answer. On the morning I was scheduled to return to duty, I woke at 4 a.m. from a dream I couldn't quite remember. Something about circles within circles, patterns that meant something crucial, something I needed to understand. I grabbed a notebook and tried to draw what I'd seen, but the image slipped away like water through my fingers. At the ranger station, Marcus greeted me with forced cheer. "Good to have you back, Merrigan. How are you feeling?" "Fine. Ready to work." "Good, good. Listen, I've reassigned you off the Rialto Beach detail. You'll be taking the mountain trail sector for a while, give you some time away from the coast." "No," I said immediately. "I want Rialto Beach. I need Rialto Beach." Marcus's expression shifted to concern. "Silas, that's exactly the kind of thinking that makes me worried. You don't need to patrol any particular sector. We rotate assignments specifically to prevent this kind of attachment." "I'm not attached. I know that beach better than anyone. I'm the most qualified to patrol it." "You're not the most qualified. You're the most traumatized. There's a difference." He softened his tone. "Look, take the mountain sector for a month. If you still feel strongly about Rialto after that, we'll discuss it. But right now, you need distance." I wanted to argue, wanted to insist. But I also knew that Marcus was right. My eagerness to return to Rialto Beach was not normal, was not healthy. It was the pull, the hook in my chest that Tara had described. The change that Thomas Everett had written about. "Okay," I agreed. "Mountain trails for a month." But even as I said it, I knew I wouldn't last that long. I made it 6 days before I went back to Rialto Beach on my own time. Night had fallen by the time I arrived at the parking area. The lot was empty except for my truck, which was good. Meant no civilians to worry about, no witnesses to whatever was about to happen. The fog was thick again. Not as thick as that night, but heavy enough. I grabbed my flashlight and started down the trail to the beach. my heart pounding with something that was half fear, half anticipation. When I reached the sand, I stopped, listening. The ocean's rhythm, the whisper of fog moving through the air. And underneath it all, something else, a sound like breathing, if breathing could be done by the space between things rather than by lungs. I walked south along the beach, following a route I didn't consciously choose but knew was right. After maybe half a mile, I found what I was looking for. A cold fire, burning in the darkness. Just one, not the circle formation from before, but unmistakably the same phenomenon. Flames that cast no heat, that existed in defiance of physics. I approached it slowly, reverently. The gray residue beneath it formed a simple pattern, a spiral, starting at the center and working outward. I pulled out my phone to take a photo, but the device went dead the moment I raised it, just like before. I came back, I said to the empty beach, like you said I would. The fire flickered but didn't respond. I need to understand. What are you? What do you want from us? Still nothing. Just the mechanical dance of the flames, the spiral pattern on the sand. I was about to give up when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, flashlight up, expecting to see one of the dark figures. Instead, I saw Tara. "I knew you'd come," she said. "I've been watching the parking lot for 3 nights, waiting for you to give in to the pull. You feel it too? The need to come back? It's stronger every day. I can barely think about anything else." She walked up beside me, looked at the cold fire. I tried to tell myself it was just curiosity, just wanting to understand. But it's more than that, isn't it? They did something to us that night. Changed something. Thomas Everett wrote about it. Called it an opening of perception, a fundamental change in consciousness. Is that what's happening to us? Are we becoming like them? I don't know, but I think we're about to find out. The cold fire suddenly flared brighter, its flames reaching higher. And all around us, more fires sprang up, not in a circle this time, but in a line, a path leading down the beach toward the sea stacks. "They want us to follow," Tara said. "I know." We looked at each other, and in that moment, I saw my own fear and determination reflected in her eyes. We both knew this was a terrible idea. We both knew we were going to do it anyway. "Together?" she asked. "Together." We followed the line of cold fires. They led us down the beach, past the tide line to a section of shore I'd never patrolled before. Here, the sea stacks rose like ancient monoliths, their bases worn smooth by centuries of waves. The fires stopped at the base of the largest sea stack, and there, carved into the stone, was the same spiral pattern we'd seen in the sand, but more elaborate, more complete. It covered the entire surface of the rock, dozens of spirals interlocking, creating a pattern that hurt to look at directly. "What is this?" I breathed. "A map," a voice said behind us. We spun. The Linda thing stood there, its smooth, dark surface reflecting the cold firelight. But it wasn't alone. Dozens of figures surrounded us, all with that same featureless darkness. "A map of what?" Tara demanded. "Of the spaces between, the gaps in reality where we exist." The Linda thing gestured at the spiral. "Your kind built these markers once, long ago, before you forgot how to see us, before you chose to live only in the solid spaces, ignoring the gaps. We're not ignoring you now," I said. "We came back. We're here. What do you want from us?" "Want? We want nothing. We simply are. But you've been opened now. You can see the spaces between. The question is, will you choose to enter them, or will you fight to stay in the solid world?" What happens if we enter? You become like us. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually over time. You'll find yourself existing more in the gaps than in the solid spaces. You'll lose your anchoring to your world. And if we fight to stay in the solid world, you'll go mad. The pull will never stop, never fade. You'll spend the rest of your lives feeling divided, belonging nowhere, comfortable nowhere. A slow torture of consciousness split between two realities. It was a hell of a choice. Lose ourselves to become something else, or remain ourselves but live in constant agony. There has to be a third option, Tara said. There has to be a way to undo what happened to us, to close the opening. There is, the Linda thing said, but you won't like it. Tell us anyway. You must become what Thomas Everett became. Not fully us, not fully you. A bridge between the spaces. You'll exist in both realities, see both worlds, belong to both and neither. You'll be forever changed, forever other. But you'll be functional. You'll be able to do your job, live your life with the knowledge that you're no longer entirely human. I thought about Thomas Everett drowning on the beach with no water in his lungs, about the rangers over the decades who'd encountered these entities and died mysteriously, about the choice we were being given. How do we become a bridge? I asked. The Linda thing pointed at the spiral on the sea stack. You walk the pattern. You trace it with your feet, from the outside in, and when you reach the center, you'll be changed, anchored in both worlds. And if we don't, if we just leave, go back to our lives, try to forget any of this happened, then the pull will destroy you. Slowly, but certainly. You've already begun to feel it consuming your thoughts, your sleep, your every waking moment. It will only get worse. Tara looked at me. What do we do, Silas? I stared at the spiral, at the intricate pattern carved into stone by people who'd lived here long before us. People who'd known about the spaces between, who'd learned to navigate them. We walk the pattern, I said. We become what we need to become to survive this. Are you sure? No, but I don't see another option. Do you? She shook her head. I guess we're doing this. We approached the sea stack together. Up close, I could see the spiral was actually a path, worn smooth by countless feet over countless years. How many people had walked this pattern before us? How many had made the same choice we were about to make? Start at the outside edge, the Linda thing instructed. Walk slowly. Don't step off the path. When you reach the center, stand in it until the change completes. How will we know when it's complete? I asked. You'll know. Helpful. Tara and I positioned ourselves at the start of the spiral, side by side. The cold fires burned brighter around us, illuminating the path. On 3, Tara suggested. On 3. We counted together, our voices mixing with the sound of the waves. 1, 2, 3. We stepped onto the spiral. Immediately, everything changed. The world seemed to split, to divide into layers. I could see the solid beach, the normal reality. But I could also see the spaces between, gaps in existence where the entities lived, where time moved differently, where the rules of physics bent and twisted. Each step forward along the spiral took us deeper into both realities. I could feel myself stretching, my consciousness expanding to accommodate two versions of existence simultaneously. It was disorienting, terrifying, exhilarating. Beside me, Tara gasped. I can see it. I can see all of it. The spaces between the waves, the gaps in the fog, the places where reality thins. My God, Silas, it's beautiful and horrible at the same time. I know, Keep walking. We're almost to the center. The spiral tightened, the path narrowing as we approached the middle. The cold fires formed a column now, rising up into the sky, marking our progress. And in the flames I could see shadows of all the others who'd walked this path before us. Thomas Everett was there, and rangers whose names I'd read in incident reports, and people from centuries ago, dressed in clothes I didn't recognize. We were joining a long tradition of border walkers, of people who existed between worlds. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we reached the center of the spiral. It was marked with a symbol I didn't recognize, carved deeper than the rest of the pattern. "Stand in it," the Linda Thing's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Stand in it and accept the change." Tara and I stood in the center together, our feet on the symbol. And the world exploded into layers upon layers of existence, reality folding and unfolding around us like origami made of space-time. I could see the beach as it was now, as it had been 1,000 years ago, as it would be 1,000 years hence. I could see the solid world and the spaces between, the gaps where the entities lived, the liminal zones where reality became fluid and strange. And I could feel myself changing, not becoming one of them. I was still human, still Silas Merrigan, but I was more now. I existed in both worlds, could navigate both realities, belonged to both and neither. The change settled over me like a weight and a gift combined. When it was done, when I finally returned fully to my body, I found I could breathe in both worlds simultaneously, could see in both directions at once, could exist in the solid spaces and the gaps between. Tara opened her eyes. When had she closed them, and looked at me? I could see she'd changed too. Could see she now existed the same way I did, split and whole at the same time. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Different. Complete, somehow. Like I've been missing a sense my whole life and just now gained it." She looked around at the beach, and I knew she was seeing what I saw. The layers, the gaps, the spaces between. "We're not entirely human anymore, are we?" "No. But we're not entirely other either. We're something in between." The Linda Thing approached us, and for the first time, I could see it clearly. Not as a dark shape or a shadow, but as what it actually was, a concentration of the space between things, given form and consciousness. It was beautiful in its own way, a living embodiment of liminality. "You understand now," it said. "You see what we are. Yes, you're not malicious. You're not evil. You're just different. You exist in the spaces we normally ignore, live in the gaps we pretend don't exist. And now you can exist there too. You can walk in both worlds. You can be rangers of the solid spaces and guardians of the gaps. You can help those who get lost in the spaces between, guide them back to the solid world before they're consumed entirely." I understood then. This was our new purpose. We weren't just park rangers anymore. We were border guards, threshold keepers, guides for those who accidentally stumbled into the liminal spaces and couldn't find their way back. "How many others are there?" Tara asked. "How many border walkers?" "Not many. Most who encounter us choose one world or the other. Few have the strength to walk between." The Linda Thing gestured around the beach. "But those who do become essential. You'll understand in time." The cold fires began to fade, the ritual complete. The entities retreated into their spaces, becoming invisible to normal perception. But I could still see them, could still sense them in the gaps between waves, in the pauses between heartbeats. "What do we do now?" I asked. "Now," Tara said, "we go back to work. We patrol the beach, we help people, and when needed, we navigate the spaces between and guide the lost back home. We're going to need to explain this to Marcus." We're not going to tell Marcus. We're not going to tell anyone. We'll do our jobs, we'll keep people safe, and we'll keep the existence of the liminal spaces secret like border walkers have always done. She was right. Some things were better left unexplained. We walked back up the beach together, our feet leaving prints in both the solid sand and the spaces between. Behind us, the spiral on the sea stack remained, waiting for the next person who would need to make the same choice we'd made. When we reached the parking lot, dawn was breaking. The fog was lifting, revealing a normal autumn morning on the Olympic coast. To anyone else, it would look like we'd just finished a routine patrol, but we knew better. We'd walked between worlds, and we'd emerged changed. My truck was still the only vehicle in the lot. I turned to Tara. Do you think we made the right choice? I think we made the only choice we could live with, or live through. That's going to have to be enough. Fair enough. As I drove away from Rialto Beach, I caught one last glimpse of it in my rearview mirror, and in the spaces between the trees, in the gaps in the morning light, I saw them. The entities, the space between things, watching, waiting, existing as they always had, in the liminal zones most people never noticed. But I noticed now, would always notice, would spend the rest of my life walking the border between worlds, existing in the solid spaces and the gaps simultaneously. It was a strange fate, but it was ours now, Tara's and mine. We were border walkers, threshold keepers, rangers of both worlds. And Rialto Beach would never be the same for us again. But then, we would never be the same either. The question Thomas Everett had asked echoed in my mind. Is this good or bad? I still didn't know the answer, but I knew I was alive. I knew I could function. I knew I had a purpose. That would have to be enough.